Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 23rd, 2022 work session of the City of Lakewood Beach. Tonight's agenda is very excellent. We are here today, for those of you in the background, we have been invited by the federal government. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 23rd.
I'm sorry, we have a little feedback. There, it's corrected.
Some of them and our comments reacted to the presentation, what's restricted, someone's gonna give it some question, what's restricted, what's not. What this is, and this is a really, really good people to listen to, because this is, money that I found, money that is not gonna be picked with. We have as a group now tonight to discuss where we think we should spend money. I'm gonna, my thing is, we all have things that we would like to have secured by this money. But my sort of view on this is we need to start with our needs. And once we get needs, we need to put our wants. Because somebody with a lot of infrastructure, city needs a lot of work. So that's kind of where I'm starting from. So I think we'll start with the presentation, Ms. Davis. Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. We're going to start from a presentation from our finance team who will. Can you take roll?
Yes, Mayor Betty Resch.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Christopher McVoy.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sarah Maliga.
Okay.
Commissioner Kimberly Stokes.
Yeah.
Commissioner Ronaldo Diaz.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We also had the pledge slated.
Okay. Stand up. Okay, stand up. Okay, so what was the Commissioner Diaz? All these details. So, is going to give us a little bit of a rundown. Yes. Okay, should we put our microphones off when we're not speaking? I'm just saying, presentation tonight. The finance team, was there a lot of what so so coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. That's that far out. And I'm the point person for that. I'm a grant administrator looking at a financial services. Easy to get a hold of. So the American Rescue Plan Act, that's where it starts. Drafted by Congress and the President of the United States, signed into law on the 11th of March, 2021. And the primary purpose was to combat negative effects brought on by the coronavirus health emergency, which impacted us all. $250 billion was allocated. Primary focus is to help all of the setbacks. State of Florida received $10.23 billion. Well, they complete 19,095,888. And that money was dispersed in two tranches. The first was in September of 2021, and the second we received in August of this year. We have a lot of latitude, which is a nice thing for the city on how to spend money. The four categories are up there. They are the first being the lost public sector revenue, which is really what the $10 million standard allowance focuses on. And really anything within the city's operating that income. And then outside of that, it's public health and economic impacts, which the city opted to disperse, and then you're really good on that. The nice thing about the standard allowances is it really streamlines all the reporting. We have quarterly reports that we have to submit. Listing everything we have going, how much money was allocated, and at the time, how much it's been spent. Public trust is we can use it for rent mortgage and for assistance that the city allocated $50,000 to obviously society to really help stave off emissions. And we get to the number that's we spent a little bit later in this. Personal protective equipment. I think we did spend some money on District 1, hand sanitizers and things like that. Mitigation prevention of COVID-19. If we set up testing sites, things like that, and behavioral health, big issue about COVID. We used that guidelines and said that you couldn't give somebody more than $13 per hour over what their wage was, and that no individual person can receive more than $25,000. Yes, I understand that we should be honest. Furnitures that is not on $2,000 out of taxes. Originally, I think it was slated for 360 workers, which would have been $1,060,000. But I have the number up there. I think at the end it's 337. Water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. This is huge because that money can be used for water treatment works, wastewater treatment. You can use it to improve water storage, testing initiatives, and rainwater harvesting. And that's just some of what you can use money for in terms of water. Broadband. Broadband is big, especially for some place like Lake Worth. People aren't that one. It can really help with work, education, development, and civic participation. Being able to have access to what's going on with something like COVID, being able to find testing sites, what's open. Working on the broadband infrastructure is going to bring more high-speed connections. And the big thing is effective map connections. If you're at the end of broadband lines off, we're there now. Schedule connect fiber optics. It can keep up that much. Capital expenditures. This is a big you can use it. We can put it towards healthcare facilities, non-study schools, recreation and leisure facilities. You can use it. They tend to like seeing going in the areas that they consider impacted or disproportionately impacted. That's real big. What they don't want to see, building of new correctional facilities, which they wouldn't. Congregate housing, the reason they steered away from that was they were afraid that it was going to be used to build congregate housing to help stave off the spread of COVID, when they thought it would probably help increasing their numbers. And then, of course, stadiums or things that are here just bringing a lot of money. They're not looking at that. They don't want to see that. This is big. Eligibility timeline, carry performance from March 3rd of 2021 to December 31st of 2024. So by December 31st of 2024, we need to obligate all of the money. And then by December 31st of 2026, we have to spend it all. Any funds not obligated by the 31st of December 2024, we need to return. And any obligated funds that we don't spend by 31st of December 2026, that's going to be returned to the treasury. And I know that on the 24th of December 2024 seems way off. But when it comes to debating, figuring out where you're going to allocate money, that time's going to go by really fast. Restrictions, can't put that money into pension funds. If there's been a change in the law that affects taxes, you can't use that money to offset that. You can't use it for debt service or replenishing final financial reserves, and you can't use it for any sort of judicial settlement or judgment. That's not allowed. This is what I was talking about before, with the impacted and dispersely impacted. If you have qualified census tracts, you've got a lot of latitude in what you can spend it on, especially with housing, homeless services, education, healthcare, welfare. We'll really sort of look at that. Because those areas were probably behind the game when COVID started, and it certainly didn't help them. So here's what we were talking about: total award, 19 million, the two tranches. The two tranche payments were 9,647,994 respectively. And here's where we talked about that one-time premium for benefit. Where originally it was 360. We actually paid out 337 employees, so the total payment was over 74,800. And as you know, so before that was done so that we could cover their taxes and other expenses, so they got a true 2,000. And here's that. So legal aid, we obligated 50,000 Commons Legal Aid Society. The last time Vince and I checked, we had spent $12,650. And I know there's some new invoices that have come in that haven't been recorded yet. So left in the coffer is 18,371,088. Now, again, the 10 million, which was the standard allowance, that's for any of your normal city operating expenses. The first 10, and then after that, you can use the other, pretty broad range. Now with that 10 million, you have those different categories. You can spend as much of that city operating expenses where you want. You're not. There's not as many. The 10 million, what you can spend it on, and the reporting. For capital expenditures, if we spend $1 million plus on something, we'll have to submit more paperwork to justify why, where we spent it and why. But for the most part, we might open. Is this money that we would consider for things like infrastructure? Yes. Okay, that's the 10 million. Well, the 10 million standard allowance would be for revenue loss. So anything from the city, and then second, the 9 million after that, you can use on the infrastructure. You can use on it. Right, and we have to prove the revenue. No. With the two options, the third one, when it first started, the initial final rule was when we had to calculate each year. If you take a look at the presentation, go back to the 7 years. Spend a little more time on this slide. Because it's 15 years, 5 years. So we have $10 million, okay, that's pretty much the other categories of public health and water, sewer, and water infrastructure. So we can spend to one of those the public sector is, we can capital investments. But you have also the other one for water, sewer, and infrastructure. That role is specific to that type of infrastructure. So we can have more monitoring to go. Yeah, I can say that $750,000 is regular systems. My question was in line with Stokes. So just to make sure, Bruce, what we're saying is the money that's already been expended is it out of 10 million lost second revenue or not the second? Second. Okay, just for the next hour. Second, I'm sorry, I had to second that here for them. Also, I just want to remind the commission that, remember, you all approved to set aside $2.5 million for the, Congresswoman, Franco's matching funds. 2.5. They did that, we got something that it's still, that's a different. I think it's, I think it should come back to some issue, recently, for the community service projects, and so we did a grant, and we committed to it. Now, would it require less? I'm not sure we can confirm, but I know you were approved. Just. Why don't we just give that $2.5 we'll verify or we know that's right now verify where we stand with the actual number because we didn't want to survive. That's right. And remember that was for something that came up that she approached us to submit a project grant, and we did, and it was related to housing, affordable housing. And so it was last minute, and we submitted, it moved forward to take. So it has not been finalized, but we put aside and we received your approval to submit that. Census and people have to invite just in case they have to finish out. We don't need it, we don't need it, but no, we do that's the matching. I just wanted to make sure we know that there are some funds that will be committed to that. With the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you. Number one question is, well, this money sitting. Yes, was back to the. That one is going to grow the longer it takes us to spend. Thanks for that. Second of all, piggybacking off what you said, I do recall the press conference. And it was $750 that we got from Congressman Franklin. So I think that's just what we have to match. Again, I believe that's what she said. So if we can pull back that other money, then we will. It's just a match of the $750. Unless they tell us, no, you're not getting $750 unless you put up to 2.5. It's a return on our investment, I guess. I think that we just there's no more questions. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll dive into hearing from you and some of the areas in which you feel that we should consider expending these ARPA funds. And recently I sent an email to each one of you, just giving you some background information that would help guide us through the conversation and also bring back to you our discussion regarding priorities. And so if we, as a guiding tool for this discussion, I thought it'd be helpful to bring forward the discussion we had previously on setting priorities. And so we can look at the issues at hand that could be supported by these funds and maybe the priorities
that we talked about from in April would help guide us through to match the priorities to the way the funds should be expended. So like I said, it's just a guiding tool for our discussion. And so I will put up our presentation that would discuss the results of the priority workshop information. So we'll walk through some of the items that were discussed that set our top 4 priorities from that meeting. So
Okay,
I
I
need
see
someone to,
Commissioner McBoy has his light on. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think your mic is on.
And you have to turn it on too. I was just gonna throw out a general one as perhaps a guiding principle that I think we've somewhat addressed in our past ones, and that's just. I'm much more in favor of things that will have a return on them over a long period of time, rather than, the difference between paying for somebody's fish versus buying them a fishing pole kind of logic, that one gives somebody a tool that continues to bring benefit to them over time, as opposed to stopping an ongoing
Right,
revenue.
that's,
I think we're all
yeah.
in similar thoughts.
And I think, I would like to gear this to needs first. And then wants. We have because the infrastructure of the city is so behind. This is an opportunity that we have to. It's very musical. This is an opportunity that we have to catch up on a lot of the infrastructure fallback, failures that we have. And Mr. Brown's here. We're going to ask him about that.
But I think a big thing that the mayor pointed out to us, this is a one-time
Right.
allotment, so it's things that are gonna need an operating budget afterwards, and you need to, where's those funds?
Exactly.
right. And so I believe that the top priorities that were brought out at our workshop might lend to what we're talking about. What can we get the biggest bang for the buck? And certainly that is definitely, what drives the decision. So if you go to the first, okay, here we go.
And this is Exhibit A for those of us.
Yes. So we had the workshop and we collected all your responses from each of you. What are your priorities for the city? And just to give you the summary overall result, all the responses related to these 4 topics: development, infrastructure, environmental sustainability, and quality of life. And so we'll dig deeper into each of these top 4 priorities. And so related to development, these are the issues that were brought up: the pool, the beachfront complex, small businesses, affordable housing, mobility, new city hall, building codes, LDR zoning, Gulfstream Hotel, CRA feasibility study, redistrict prior to sunset, unique community character, define what kind of community we want to be, and keep core values: sustainability, resilience, environment, and dark skies.
Okay.
Okay, under infrastructure, the responses related to that were continue improvements, street restructuring, public assets, library and parks. Related to environmental sustainability, carbon neutrality or carbon sink, energy efficiency in building environment, keep core values, sustainability, resilience and dark skies, and protect human impact on environment. And lastly, quality of life issues, events, inclusivity of all residents, cemetery, improved level of care, service and appearance, PBSO wearing body cameras, lower tax millage, pursue and develop relationships with neighboring governments and offices, noise issues, tree canopy, native plants for birds and bees, bus shelters, recreation, walking and biking, mental health services and crisis intervention team, improve customer service, communications and website, continually improve workplace culture. So these were the related issues under those 4 top priorities. And so I also offered here a word cloud so you can see visually out of the responses that were put into the word cloud. You see the most prominent letters or words were some of the most common words used among all five of you. And so that is what created what I call the top four priorities. And so I just categorized those into the top four. And you see what type of issues come up: environment, mobility, small business, affordable housing, new city hall, energy, oceanfront. So those are prominent issues. And then you see the other issues surrounding that.
And these are also on our printouts for us to.
Yes, you have a printout.
Mhm.
Now, this one is a comparison. Of course, you had another workshop in October. The first workshop was October 10th and 21. And so that was the word cloud. And you see some of the differences in the prominent words. You see marketing, community, pool, but it was a remarkable resemblance of what the top issues are. And it ended up being under the categories of infrastructure, development, sustainability, environmental sustainability, and quality of life. That would be a fun glance to see how it all turned out as far as the word cloud. So that concludes the slide. So I wanted to offer up this discussion on the top priorities, so you can have in the back of your mind some of the issues that were important to you during that time. And then it can also lend to the discussion of pointing out some of whether those issues should be part of your ARPA allocations. And if you notice in the email that I presented, I'm sorry, we can remove the PowerPoint. Somebody can help me with that. But if you see in the email that I sent, I also took liberty to point out some of the critical operational needs or capital needs in the city. And as you know, the ARPA funds are certainly given to communities to address those issues, as you heard from our presentation from the finance team. And so what I did, I went into our capital improvement plan and pulled out the most critical capital needs in the city to date. And as you can see, it mentioned the city hall, the need for exterior paint and waterproofing, the fire station #1. Yes, I'm sorry, it's page
It's on
2
the second page of the email. Yep.
of your email, page 2.
Like that. Critical operational and capital improvement needs, and staff has put this together, correct?
Correct. And this is pulled out from our proposed budget,
Okay.
the CIP plan.
Oh,
And so these are listed in the CIP plan in the proposed budget. And I wanted to highlight some of the most critical items so that they can be at the forefront of your mind as we have this conversation. The first one is City Hall exterior painting and waterproofing, $75,000. Fire station #1 exterior painting and waterproofing, $60,000. The library needs impact windows, $120,000. The Northwest Ball Fields lighting upgrades, that cost is $656,000. The South Bryant Park Playfield, $150,000 for new equipment. Bryant Park Jetty engineering work, that is just the work to evaluate what needs to be done and the cost, $62,000. The casino elevator upgrades, $50,000. We have a series of stormwater projects, which total, and there's a correction in that, it should be $2,150,000. The fuel tank replacement,
That was 1.05.
no, 2.15.
I thought we only had to pay half of it because of the matching.
Correct, because we.
that's right, and we're gonna,
Went through that.
that's right, we're gonna make some adjustments in that because half of it is only needed because we do have grant fundings.
Correct.
And as we talked at the last workshop, the finance team will be making those adjustments and those numbers. So it should be about 1.1 million, somewhere in there. Yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes. Thank you for pointing that out. The next is the fuel tank replacement, $1 million. And then this is not listed in the capital improvement, the CIP at this moment, but I wanted to at least raise the awareness about additional work to our right of ways, roads, sidewalks, and ADA projects. So I kind of threw out a number about $1 million, and that's of course open for discussion. And then the City Hall Annex improvements, I put there $2 million. That's not necessarily a hard number. That was just a number to discuss. As you know, you all approved $1.5 million within the Strip 2 project for customer service to make renovations to that area. We've recently toured the building, and there are other infrastructure needs in that building that need to be addressed. We'll be conducting the evaluation of that building to determine what type of work, but we believe there's possibly some roofing works and work that needs to be done. We do see in the CIP plumbing as well as impact windows.
I'd like to say something about that particular item. And a couple of people have brought it to my attention, and I loathe to do this, but I know we've been talking about it to make it a customer service place, but there is also something to be said, perhaps, using that building as like our cultural place. Instead of having customer service there, we have the library, we have, the little bookstore. Perhaps using, I'm sorry, the museum, right?
Mhm.
Perhaps keying that building as a more of a community use rather than the electric customer service. And I don't know where that, I hate to do this because I know we've been talking
Well,
about.
no, I think this building, whether we use it as we currently do, or whether we,
It needs work.
needs work.
Right.
It needs
But I think
work.
my understanding is there's a design going in, and I apologize, Mr. Liberty, to really specify it for the needs of the electrical customer service.
Yes,
Does this money include an elevator?
yes,
does.
it does.
Okay.
It does, because once we conduct work that may run over 51%, how is it, Jamie? 51% of the cost?
Correct. Back
Mhm.
electricity. It's the old-
It's an old building,
Plumbing,
right?
We need to address all.
Anyway, no matter what we use the building for, it has to be.
that's
Okay.
right, that's right. So I just wanted to put that for conversation piece, that was not totally in the CIP, but put that in for conversation purposes.
Commissioner
So-
Stowe.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Mayor. I know I've long hoped that building could be used more like the Children's Museum that they have in Boynton Beach, but maybe not. Theirs in Boynton Beach is the history of Boynton, and it's a very interactive experience. But ours could be more of a cultural celebrate, but still interactive and, less than just look at these things and plaques and things that are on the wall.
The synergy between the library, the cultural plaza,
right.
and that building is kind of.
There's,
Mhm.
so I do think we might want to have a conversation in the nearish future about the future of that building, because depending on what it's going to be,
Mhm.
might open up other funding sources. But we all agree, yes, it needs to be.
The building itself,
Improved.
the building itself needs upgrades no matter how. we use
Regardless.
it. Commissioner Diaz.
Yeah, I mean, I share those same thoughts. I think we can hopefully find a combination use, like why not pay your bill and visit the museum and buy some books while you're at it. But I think, yeah, that's a good conversation to had. My question was, because I don't know if I think we've discussed it, and maybe we should discuss it more now, and I don't think we've settled on it, but we approved, looking at the first floor and then what needs surrounding it. So are we still talking about it in terms of, or predominantly focusing on the first floor? And can we talk about, are we gonna do
I think the building
We're
as a
talking-
whole.
We're talking the whole
Yeah.
building.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
yeah.
It's the whole building.
I mean, right now, it's used for storage of all those boxes of papers, and I just can't even imagine that it's haven't fallen down yet. So, okay, well, so that's, and I apologize for kind of bringing that up, but I thought this is probably a good time to do it now that we're talking about it. Commissioner Malega?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In light of Carmen's revelation on the stormwater projects, the 1.150 that is left over, I would like us to greatly consider moving that towards earmarking it for the oceanfront property, to bring that money closer to 6 million, because right now I think we're sitting at 4 and change and penny sales tax.
Let me ask a question. Is there, we had this promise when we started that there was $6 million and then we heard it was not $6 million.
There's
and
the
we were
number you sent me.
all very sad about that. So is there a little bucket of money for the Oceanfront Park project anywhere anymore? Don't laugh.
I'm laughing because they're allocated the right way to respond to the conversation was and you're right, there was a $6 million amount that was set aside. Unfortunately, there were other obligations that and I saw it by schedule last week. I don't know if I had a chance to review it. But essentially, right now, there's about $5 million of available funds. Now, that our first investment of revenues was about $19 million. We're getting higher full receipts from the sales tax.
Yeah.
So now we're up to about $4.7 million range of funds that we're anticipating to receive. But until we receive them, we can't.
We're not gonna count our chickens.
It's been down on the.
So we could potentially have 4.7 million towards the pool if we receive the funds that you think we're receiving.
In the years out, yeah.
And is that including the 1.5 that's there now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so
Page six.
Can I have
page
that back?
16 of the, it was page 16 of the handout from our last,
okay.
is there a new one from today?
So let me go back to my thought process, right? Is we've all been meeting with pool designers. If we can say, okay, hopefully we'll have close to 4.7 in the penny sales tax. If we can true up that 6 million by taking the million that was allocated to stormwater and making it close to 6 million. So then when we go to Tallahassee, when we go to the county and we say, okay, here's the design we've all agreed on. We've got 6 million put aside. Now we can start asking for that match money because we put a commitment in the bank.
Yeah.
We've got 6 million. We need 12. Let's get 3 from the county and 3 from the
And
state.
hopefully
I'm just throwing that idea out there if you guys are agreeing.
If I can
go ahead.
be Dr. Doom,
Don't.
remember the spending timelines that we have to, okay, we have to spend down these monies by December 26th.
If we make this is the commission with gumption. If we make a decision on the design and potential things, it has to be committed and spent by 26.
26.
Correct. So I think, hopefully we can do that. I was the last one to have a Zoom meeting today with the Zimmerman, with the pool people about just, my visions and Chris, you had come up a few weeks ago with, an idea about the pool that you. And then it was, I think we're all pretty much on the same page as far as this goes. What I asked them to do is to do a value engineering sort of platform. What is a hole with water in it with a pump and a bathroom and then how much does it go from there and I also hope that somehow we could get some sort of funding either from the feds or from the state, because this is about health and safety. This is about children learning to swim. This is about after activities. So I'm hoping that
It's also about tourism, which is where the
Absolutely.
county will kick in money
Absolutely.
if we put this money aside and
Yep.
say, okay, we've made this a priority.
Yep.
And it's only $1 million. I mean, it's not
Right.
like we're saying we're gonna take 6 million of the ARPA money and put it towards.
right. So I think,
oceanfront
I'm optimistic about the fact that somehow if we make a commitment to doing it and we do put some money aside, that folks, that's going to be part of the question is, does that have the demolition? I think we all just take a big old sledgehammer and have a party, $10 a shot. We got it done. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, because you've got a lot of concrete to come out of there.
Right.
You've got a lot in labor, a lot in dump fees. You have a lot of triaxles coming in and out of there trying to.
You have a
move it.
substitute Dr. Doom. I like that.
I had a question about,
So does that mean we have some consensus possibly to put $1 million aside towards shoring that up to closer to 6 million?
I think so. I mean, I would be for that.
Yeah, I
But
think we
Commissioner
all,
Stokes was gonna talk and we have a.
I do. I think we all were expecting to be able to put $6 million towards the pool. I imagine that money would be coming out of the $10 million. So when we say, not that I'm not trying to delay this at all, but I just want to be, make sure that we're all on the same page. That $10 million, has that already been spent? Like I know it hasn't been spent. I meant like, we took it from ARPA funds and we paid ourselves back. Does it also have a timeline? Or is it like, nope, you moved it over here to cover your costs and it's on a different timeline?
The money is sitting in a separate fund, if you will.
Okay,
So it's designated that can only be used for X purposes. There has, with the exceptions of what we talked about tonight, the $50,000, the $1 million, the bonus, that kind of stuff. Nothing else has been spent. Nothing else has been earmarked.
I mean, I guess I'm saying if the federal government said you have $18 million, we took $10 million of that and
Right.
put it back into our general fund. Do
No.
we? No, where?
No, it's in a separate fund.
Okay, in a separate fund and
Right.
it has a timeline as well.
That $10 million
That's the
has
time.
a
That's what I'm-
timeline.
it's two different funds. I just want to make sure we're all on the same
Yeah.
page. We all know that there's a pot of about $8 million that can only be used for so many purposes and have to follow that timeline. Are we also saying the 10 million is
The
also?
$10 million
same
has
timeline?
that timeline.
Okay,
These are all separate, these are all ARPA funds.
right.
So it's a consistent application of the rules.
Okay, we are paying ourselves back, so I just wanted to make sure. So we're all on the same page. Everything has a timeline.
I just want to make sure we're not really paying
Paying
ourselves
ourselves
back.
back.
We have $10 million of
Unrestricted.
discretionary unrestricted funds that can be spent. Whereas the other remaining money, the $9 million less expenditures,
Mhm.
can be spent only pursuant to those other categories. Okay, but money isn't sitting in a separate fund. It's not a repayment.
Okay, Chris, Mr. McVoy?
On the pool one, I think I'm hearing a lot of consistency too, that I think there's a willingness to put some of that money, the ARPA money, something on the order of $1 million to add. I very much agree with what the mayor said, that we have some pretty interesting objectives that include health and safety, include uniting our community as a welcoming place. And I think Commissioner Malega in the past made some allusions to that might open us up to more interesting funding. So I think if we put some money in, we're clearly putting somewhere, we're in a better position to ask
Mhm.
state, federal,
So,
private.
yeah, so do we have consensus then to bring this up to 6 million?
Oh, yes. And
Okay.
the only thing I was going to say to that is that we should, as we do that, make sure that we have technical information, because tourism went by, as I mentioned,
Mhm.
that whatever we do on our design, that we've gotten the best technical information. Does that not shut any doors? And depth of the pool is one that I'm
Right.
hearing from technical people. Don't go too shallow or you're shutting out some important doors.
Right.
Mm.
Like when I spoke with them today, I was, they're asking us the same questions. I didn't do it on site, but some lanes for people to swim, some place for people to, old ladies to do water aerobics, bless you, Sally Walsh. And then, maybe a good entry for handicapped and children to go in. I mean, I think we've had a lot of conversations about the pool, and I think we all sort of have a place, the same concept, a place that our citizens can feel welcome and have a place to go, and then also an attraction as like a tourist attraction. And hopefully we can do both, and hopefully we can get funding. Mr. Diaz?
Yeah, and we can, as we move closer, we can get creative. I like and it's funny you mentioned the concrete. I never even thought how the mass of concrete is going to come out of there. And maybe, I know the county.
Make a reef, an artificial reef.
Exactly what I was thinking. Maybe the county would be like, hey, as long as the concrete's not plasticized or
Right.
too toxic, maybe we could find use, and that cuts back on, if you demo something, you have to pay to put it somewhere.
Just throw it off the end of the pier. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can.
We could, again, we have got to be creative. We,
Yeah.
we're a poor city, financially rich in other ways. But that was a good point to bring up. So And the splash pad outside the pool, that's the other thing that I keep talking about, is that outside of the pool that you don't have to pay to get in. So at the end of the day, somebody can bring their kids up and let them get wet and splash around and not have to swim and go to the ocean. So that was my other thought that my other 2 cents. All right. Moving right along.
Okay, Madam Mayor.
Yep.
So there are some other suggested allocations for the funds, as mentioned in my email. There was one other item. I mentioned the ERP replacement, and that's suggested $4 million. I think we talked a little bit about that at
For the
our,
public, can you tell them what ERP? is?
Right. Thank you.
yes, and enterprise resource planning software. Get it right? So the ERP system is a system that connects all departments as a centralized hub for financial, customer service, data communicator within the city.
And what effect would that have? Why would that be a benefit to the city?
It'll create efficiency within the city as far as communication, our datas that are shared among all departments have full access, and it will also help with our point of service departments that collect money. So all the transactions will feed into a centralized database and it'll certainly make it efficient for the finance team to process the finances of the city. Also, it'll also connect utilities, will be connected into that.
So right now, they're all different little pieces and
Yes,
them together.
Well.
yes, please.
The system that we are using today, Navline system, has been with us for quite a while.
Right.
And I think back in the day, it was a very good selection. But as technology has advanced and advanced and advanced, and we are on the most current version, thank you. It still lacks the it's not as robust, if you will, as current technologies. And to give you an example, it's been difficult doing a banking conversion because of some systems and limitations. We can't do point of sales as much because some of these issues. So we don't have a platform, if you will, to provide the customer service. In the meantime, the productivity, just for my department, I can't speak for everybody else, but it's a very labor intensive process where to pull information and to sort the information. Another is report writing. We are to push the budget out and to push the financial statements out. It's very labor intensive. These new systems are much more user friendly. Report writing is much more robust, and we can do a lot with that and cut down a lot of the manual processes. So there's a lot that brings to the table.
So our staff would be freed up to do other things rather than the things that they're doing now, which take more time.
Very well.
That's
said.
one of them. That's
Yes,
one of them.
yes.
And I see your light on. I will call you. That's a $4 million nut, correct? Is that a pretty solid number?
4 to 6. It's 4 to, well, depending upon what system, I'll step back. That number of $4 million to $6 million came from 2 communities, local communities, Boynton Beach. I'm sorry.
That's what they spent on it. That's what it cost them.
Right, Delray and Wellington. Delray was $4 million. Wellington was about $6 million. Depending upon the software, when we go
And
out.
we have a lot more. We've got the electric utility that a lot of these other cities don't have, right?
Well, they also, for example, Munis has an accounts receivable billing module. It doesn't matter how many people you have on it.
Mhm.
If you use that billing module, you're paying for that billing module. So
we need it all because we've got so many
we
enterprises.
have it.
Okay.
Right.
We need the deluxe version.
Yes, we have to have many modules. Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
It was mostly answered. My question was, is the 4 million reflective of us honing down choices, or is it 4 to 6? Because we started
It's really right now 4 to 6.
4 to 6, okay.
Okay, it may be even less, depending upon if we go out to do an RFP. We have some potential vendors that they think that they can do the implementation.
Maybe they just like us and want to give us a big discount.
Well,
We're so nice.
you say that, but
It can happen.
but there's hosting solutions that in the long run cost you more because they're hosting it. You don't own the equipment. There are ways that we could be doing the financing that may cut down a little bit of this. So, but as soon as we can make the commitment and the
But 6
commitment,
is a safe number.
the $4 million, I think, is a safe number. That's
You're okay, because I just see the 4 here, not 6.
I think the $4 million is, I talked to Carmen about it. I think we're pretty good with that number. But that allows us the ability to start the procurement process.
Okay, Mr. McBoy.
Two thoughts on the ERP. One, and they're sort of opposing, which is interesting, but one is I've heard for years concerns about the current, major software system that we use to run the city, which is the Navaline one. And ERP is just the generic name for that kind of software. I've heard lots of unhappy employees about it. So one thing that I would add to the list of reasons to do it is also ability to attract employees and ability to retain employees, that they don't run screaming out of here like, where did you get this system and why is it still here?
Well, we have a reason, candid, right?
So that's a pretty good argument. 4 million is a big chunk, and we have a finance director that won't let her spend money twice. So once we spend it on that, we don't spend it on something else. The other side of it is that we talk about that this would increase efficiency and customer service. And as an elected person, I would, if we go this route, I would want some very clear measures of, will residents in the city see that? They're not going to
Sure.
see anything about employee retention, but I want to make sure that they really see in some concrete ways. I want people to put on paper, what exactly would this do for, as a resident?
I think that's great, and I think it would be incumbent upon us to, and I hear this as a need, I don't hear this as really an option. That it would be incumbent on us to increase our communication with our citizens to do exactly that, to
And
let
I
them
can-
know this is
Yes,
happening.
and I can give you a clear example. But right now, as far as permits,
Mhm.
it's hard to apply for permits online. So it'll improve our online services in the city. And so that's just one example. So,
And that's a big one.
and I'm sure that there are others. There's
Yes.
others.
Commissioner Stokes.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I haven't looked at this in our supplemental budget request. Do we have this in here? Does it have like the whole justification statement? Some of these are, I'm just wondering if we want to beef that up a little bit to really like lay out, like what you said with the permits. I know paying your electric utility bill online, there's like a lot of the beach decals, there's a lot of areas where our residents are inconvenienced. So I think if we could really spell out
Yep.
what this would be able to do. Another reason I think that's important is from what I was hearing when we talked about this, is that during the selection process of which workflows you're going to implement and what components you're going to buy, there might be some give and take among different departments of what works best for one department and what doesn't. So I just want to make it clear, if we allocate this money, what our expectations are during that process as you're deciding which workflows to implement and what components to buy.
Yeah.
So
I have a suggestion. As we go down this list, I mean, it seems like this ERP is a given that we need to spend that money. So I'm going to suggest that as we go down this list, we just, okay, here's a list. Here's 4 million, let's a little whittle away at the amount so that we, just to keep a thing. So let's have $4 million for the ERP. Easy. 4 million,
I think Commissioner Malega,
has her light on.
she wants to add another point for it.
I don't. I just want the people who are listening to realize that this ERP doesn't happen overnight. It could
Right.
take
It's a long-
5
it's a
years
process.
to implement totally. I mean, we got to go out for RFP. This isn't going to happen in 2 years from now.
Right.
How long did it take Del Rey? Like 4 years, I think I heard.
Well,
Del Rey to implement.
I don't know. I can tell you from my own experience. It seems like everywhere I go, I get into a systems conversion. And you're absolutely right. It's a very long, arduous process. Employees are working 2 jobs. The one job of their day to day, and then the second job is the implementation. So you have to add dollars, which I think the $4 million does to cover and, procure professional assistance.
Right.
So there's a lot of soft costs to this too. But to your direct question, minimally, I see a 3-year implementation. After we do the
Agree and
RFP.
sign contracts. And,
Exactly.
okay, so we're talking 4 years minimum.
4.
Okay.
right.
But a long-term investment.
So I just
Yeah.
I
that-
realize
thank
this
you.
is gonna happen like in 18 months.
Wave a magic wand. Commissioner Stokes.
Piggyback off Commissioner Malega. But will we see some improvements year one? So to me, it seemed like, okay, we're gonna start, because it's an implementation process. Year one, as we do the conversion, will we see some things come online and some improvements and then, or is it like you just flip it, you wait 3 years and flip
No,
a switch?
what you do is you prioritize the modules. So, and that will have to be done internally, as part of a work group. So you have a manager, typically independent, help facilitate the identification of priorities. Typically, and not necessarily, but typically you go with the general ledger first, the financials. So everything reports to.
Interesting coming from you.
Well, quite frankly, sometimes I like other systems, but everything ties into the general ledger. So it's important to get the general ledger up. But then, you identify, is it, the land use modules for Williams Department.
Permitting and things.
Or is it the receivables? You don't have to do it one by one by one by one. Okay, so I suspect that Ed would be working on modules on his side.
Okay.
William would be working on modules on his side, and then do it incrementally based on the departments. So if land management has 2 or 3 modules, they would pick the highest priority and work down through.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of hear us saying that it would be helpful if we could have some of those modules which affect the public directly come onto line sooner rather than later, so that so the public sees.
The outward
the result.
facing modules
Right.
are very
Okay.
important, yes.
Okay, great. We have $4 million for that. I'm going to make a further suggestion because there's so much to talk about. If we look at that critical operational and capital improvement needs, the list that Ms. Davis has put together, starting with City Hall, why don't we go down that list and just see, these are the things that the staff has identified as things that we need. Why don't we go down that list? Because then at the end of that, we can start talking about wants.
What's left?
Yeah,
Yeah.
City Hall, exterior paint and waterproofing.
Do it to it.
So 75,000?
Yeah.
For that. So somebody take notes. I'm not a great note taker. Well, thank you. Okay. So we're good with consensus for the 75 grand.
Yes.
Okay. Fire station exterior painting and waterproofing, 60 grand.
Are we sure that we can't get the fire department to cover that rather than we? I think the answer is,
Yeah,
Okay.
we're responsible
Yeah.
for the building.
what's that?
We are.
We're responsible for the building.
You can always ask.
And not, sorry to interrupt, but should we give a little brief explanation as to why for anyone that might be listening, like City Hall, the paint and waterproofing, it's not aesthetic, like there's.
That's right.
It's a need. It's an old building. It hasn't been painted for a while. It's,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Do
it's
get-
showing where, it's showing.
yeah, it's showing you where, and this is such a valuable building. We want to maintain it so that we have it for future use. Fire station number 1, it's been a while since
Same
that
thing.
station has been done, so it needs it. The impact windows for the library, $120,000. I think that is.
Yes, I think these are the remaining built windows. I think we started that process, and so this is finishing up the full work.
Mr. Brown, is that true?
Correct, Mr. Brown?
Let's have Mr. Brown come up.
Mr. Brown, here you go.
Ooh, we even have a microphone for you.
Thank you,
Now you get to sing.
but on a student thing. Oh, that is correct. So that. So, yeah, so the 120, that would be to finish the remainder of the impact windows at the library.
Yeah, I thought we had some, so that's good.
Every year, just like we did with City Hall, we were systematically scheduling as much as we could. So it was taking multiple years to actually do.
And City Hall is complete with the.
City Hall is now complete, correct?
It is complete.
It is complete with all
Okay,
impact windows.
yes, for the library?
So the 120 that we're talking about would complete the library.
This would complete the library. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, do I have consensus on?
Yes.
Everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Next,
next.
let's just knock this out.
that's right.
Lighting upgrades to the northwest ball fields. How much are the northwest ball fields actually used these days? That's a big chunk of money.
That's a big chunk of money. I'm a lot more hesitant about that.
Where's Lauren? Oh, she's
I
not
know
here.
at her last report at our workshop meeting on the capital improvement, she indicated that we still have nighttime baseball games.
Mhm.
And so I'm not sure how often it is, but we can check on that.
Okay, do I have
Let's
consensus?
hold on that.
Do I have, let me finish. Do I have consensus to sort of set that aside as to be revisited?
Yes,
Yes.
Consensus?
yes.
Mr. Diaz?
So,
Yeah, I mean, I too got sticker shock. I wasn't sure if it was like the entire mast and everything needs to be
Right. I think-
replaced, so I wonder if we can
Okay.
like maybe do field, field by field or something.
Have
we
that
should talk
broken
about.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's set aside a little bit.
And before we move on from
Okay.
that, how many fields are we talking about?
Well, that's, I think, what
Yes.
we're gonna look at.
Okay,
That's the question.
and so you'll come back with how many fields, how often they're used. I
Yeah.
know
Yes.
people, there was somebody before who was wondering about maybe taking over a field or two for volleyball
And- yes, and
or other
soccer,
activities.
Beach
and things
volleyball and
that-
soccer.
Yeah, I
They're
wonder if they would
on
still
board.
require the same lighting or different, so,
I think that's why we're.
Right.
Yeah.
okay, so we'll
there's-
bring it up to like,
Yep.
all of that.
There is, I'm told, on the weekends, extremely organized soccer teams, city soccer teams that are, I mean, the field, it's not set up for a soccer field. So we do have a request for the girls volleyball, beach volleyball nets, which I think would be I think that's a good thing. They saved the sand from where they were before. They actually have the sand put away. Apparently, it's very expensive. So I think, let's look at the ball fields as kind of a separate project.
okay.
Okay. Bryan Park South, South Bryan Park Playground, 150. We have nobody here from Recreation.
Yes, so
No, but-
that's,
Lewis.
the report was that the equipment is old, it's
Mhm.
aged,
Mhm.
and it's rusting, and at some point it could be harmful to the children if we continue to neglect it.
Right.
So we wanted to redo the playfield, and it's used very often.
It's highly used.
Yes.
Do we have consensus for the 150 for that?
Yes,
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Moving right along. Engineering work with the jetty. That
Yes.
sounds like a need.
yes.
Okay,
And-
consensus on that.
And that's
We-
for
we had
engineering work,
Yeah, that's for the design
design,
with some note from Commissioner Diaz on considering circulation
Yeah,
east and west or north and south underneath it,
right.
So that would be part of,
Yeah, there's,
improve water quality.
and we have an
I won't
expert.
nerd out on you guys, but from a hydrology
Please don't.
perspective, there's a dead corner of water that sits there stagnant. If we
Okay.
could just, maybe some culverts or something, who knows, you guys will.
Great. No, that's wonderful to have that expertise.
Mhm.
Casino elevator upgrades.
Yes.
Everybody can
Okay.
walk. I'm just kidding.
Oh, boy.
Close
That's such an ableist thing to say.
Oh, boy.
Listen in.
We're
Think we
upping
need
your
this, Jamie,
circulation.
this is something that we need.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay,
Exactly
I-
happen.
yeah, I do use them quite often and they are a little,
Need some work.
Similar and related. Could we also, or should we discuss including the handrails that we talked about the other meeting?
where are they?
We already paid.
We
did
already
that.
approved it, right?
We already
Okay,
approved it, it's
yeah.
done.
What going up? the
The
stairs?
handrail, yeah,
We did that.
that was already.
Well, the handrails we approved were for the actual.
Beachfront.
walk itself, the beach.
Right, but so,
Oh,
and we,
but-
okay, so
Oh, that's
we
different.
talked about the stairway, the staircase, should we like, I mean, cause I think. they're kind of both very related, right? Elevator, safe handrail.
Yeah, that is in our CIP. I
Okay.
did not put that in there because it wasn't considered super critical as these are, but it doesn't mean it's not important. And
Yeah.
Jamie probably can shed greater light on the condition.
Yeah, and like we discussed last time, it was the powder coat versus what we actually went with on the beachfront, which
Yeah.
is just the regular
Marine grade aluminum,
marine grade aluminum.
uncoated.
So, yes, to the upgrade to the elevators. Consensus, yes.
Yes,
Stormwater projects, 1.150 million.
yes.
And those
Okay.
are all, from Brian, those are all ones that have
Here
a
comes
degree of
Mr.
match to them.
Yes, those are the ones we got.
Mr. Shields, our stormwater guy.
Yes, Brian Shields, Water Utility Director. Yeah, those three projects that were already designed, they're ready to go. We did receive state funding on all three to match that, so
The 450 that we got.
450, 300, and 300. So,
Correct.
so 1,050,000 is available from grant funding. This would be to match that.
Mhm.
Okay, but we would need 1.5 out of our ARPA funds to complete the project.
Right, unless there's some other source for those funds, but
You know, there's not.
There could be infrastructure money, but that's a whole different world.
Everybody start buying lottery tickets. Mr. McBoy?
And the only thing that I'd remind us on that one is let's make sure that as we do those, that we set aside a little bit for community access, paddleboard, kayak, canoe with those, where not so much for 18th South, but the other two.
the other two, we will take a look at that, yes.
Yeah. Because
But I
that's,
did want to remind you, I think earlier in this meeting, that 1.05 went towards the oceanfront park, if I'm not
Yes, that's
mistaken.
correct.
Yes, it did.
So,
Sorry.
so if
Yes.
it were to go to stormwater, it's being spent twice.
No,
Bruce says that's
it was
okay.
allocated, 2.2 was allocated.
But we just took that
So
out.
we're giving you 1.1 and
It started
taking
at
1.1.
2.5, we took away one.
All right, got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So as long as we have enough money to cover what our needs are, including the matching for the 450 version.
453 and 3,
So for the stormwater projects, our number is 1.5,
1.05.
1.05. Do we have consensus for that?
Yes.
All right, let's go.
Madam Mayor?
Yep.
If I may go back to the Northwest Ball Fields, we received a cyber answer.
Oh,
A cyber answer. So Jamie received the answer. I guess they're listening.
Per Lauren Bennett. I
Hi, Lauren.
texted her.
Oh, thank you.
This is about the usage of the Northwest Ball Field. She said all year long, FIPS has a year-long contract, nightly practices and weekend games. Only break is time for the fields to rest.
I wonder how much we make off of the rentals
Mm,
from that. I think we had made a good decision to kind of take a look at the Northwest Ball Fields as its own little project.
I
Okay.
agree.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some good details in there, like how, I mean, the new lights, they're expensive, but they would also save us considerable on electric bills
Sure.
and the details, so.
It's always safety, safety, safety. I mean,
Yes.
that's number one.
And if. Right,
Correct.
that's right.
but how much
that's
are we
right.
getting for the right, so we're gonna look at it, I think. Commissioner Stokes?
I have a question just as we're going through all of this.
Uh-huh.
Is everything eligible through ARPA or are we keeping track of making sure?
Oh,
All
eligible.
of these things are eligible. So
Yes.
the 10 million versus
Still
8
hasn't been
doesn't
touched.
matter. Well,
That's
this
right.
is over 10 million. Once we add all this up.
Well, almost, okay, you're the math.
It's close to, it's
Well,
actually
there's a
close
4
to 10.
million
Four,
for- or-
Yeah.
Okay, so the fuel tank replacement.
Okay.
11.4.
Mr. Brown,
He needs it.
I think so.
How long will it last us? Once we replace it?
Our current tanks are on 32 years. And the issue we're running into is insurance does not want to insure past 30.
Approved,
So.
So $1.1 million for the fuel tank replacement, do we have consensus?
approved.
1 million.
1 million.
Yes,
1 million.
1 million.
Yes. Yeah.
1 million, okay.
And as I mentioned last time, this is a phase 2, the actual in-ground replacement of the tanks. Right now, you guys just approved phase 1, which is the dispensers as well as the actual overall fuel maintenance system.
Yep.
So that's being done this current fiscal year.
So we won't see you for 30 years for that. Great.
The road sidewalk ADA projects, we have $1 million for this, and I have to say, I think that is a low number. We have so many street and sidewalk, a lot, we're out of the bond money's gone. A lot of people did not get any improvements to their streets or sidewalks. So I just wonder if $1 million is actually a realistic number to put towards that.
No, this is the grant one, Bruce, correct? I'm not looking at the, okay. Yeah, so this was one of the grants we got through the Transportation Planning Agency. So this is the Transportation Alternatives Grant. So we're actually getting reimbursed 840.
No,
This is separate?
yeah,
That's what I was asking if this is something different.
yes, I'm sorry, I missed that. Yes, this is separate from that project.
Okay.
This is above and beyond that. I know that you mentioned that there are a lot of sidewalk repairs in the city, some ADA upgrades that we need to have done. So this is an add-on that, as I reflected on some of the great needs within the city, I thought that we should have a conversation about, do we want to put some aside for this work? So I know Jamie may have some thoughts about that.
Is $1 million enough?
It-
No. No.
That's an interesting question.
I tried.
Obviously, we're all aware that the deferred maintenance when it comes to infrastructure has been pretty great over the past couple decades. So the amount, anything helps. I'll say that much. Because you could throw 10 million at me and I can blow through that, I guarantee you.
They were talking
So-
about this in the 90s when I was city attorney. It's been everybody, it's easy to not do because there's never any money. So I'm saying, I mean, here we have a little bucket of money that maybe we should throw more than $1 million at.
And we'll be able to knock out a lot of those critical areas that we weren't able to actually get to during the 4-year bond program, because given that it was just the 4-year bond program, the amount we had, we tackled the worst first. That's all.
And my thought in putting this on was to think that this is a one-time shot for us.
Exactly.
And these items have been deferred for so many years. Let's take advantage of addressing our most neglected
Yeah, I think
areas
we
at
need to
this
take
point.
care of our needs before we take care of our wants.
But that $1 million can be used as match money from an additional grants, correct? Like if you found more grants for ADA sidewalk or,
Correct. And that one of the ones we've already gotten was from the TPA. So yeah, that we could use that for
As leverage.
matching if we find.
Okay.
Right.
so
additional
we can try to
That's
get
right.
two first.
That's
out
right.
of this.
And we're doing it with all of these items.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Stokes.
Well, I know that we've been working hard to try to come up with a long-term plan for dealing with our roads. There's been some money that through the penny sales tax that has been allocated for that. We are transitioning to use the gas tax
Mhm.
and other things like that. I'm really nervous that we haven't talked at all about public health or behavioral health or any of these.
I'm getting.
I
down my
understand,
list.
but I'm watching millions and millions of dollars go away, and to increase any of these areas, there's not going to be much left for us to work with if if we could ask Brian, he could ask for another $10 million. We could. I'm getting worried about spending all of it on physical infrastructure.
But it's the stuff that's gonna last us the long term. I mean, we still have 10 million in the unrestricted balance that if we want to help with
No,
9 million in unrestricted balance
I
that
also,
we can use towards the human factor part. But this is stuff like a fuel tank that's gonna last us 30 years.
I
Impact
understand, like, we have to have insurance. I understand all of this, but from my calculation, everything on this list is about $13 million, which gives us about 5 left, 2.5, which has already been dedicated or that we need to save for,
It's 11.4 on the top. The infrastructure plus the ERP is 11.423.
Okay. Do we have it? I don't know. Maybe I double counted something,
No,
but we're going through list by list without having the full conversation.
but I think that
And-
and I understand what you're saying. And I don't disagree with you, but I think that as the arbiters of the overall quality of life of citizens in the city, our infrastructure has just been neglected for so long that my personal feeling is that we have other needs and wants, of course, but this is our one-shot deal to actually bring our infrastructure somehow back up to where it should be. Commissioner Diaz?
Yeah, kind of agree with both of their sentiments because it is really important. The accessibility, especially on our sidewalks, it's just bad in a lot of places. And but I appreciate Commissioner Stokes bringing that up because I do want to be conscious, mostly because with these mobility things, we can get, I'm conscious that we can get money elsewhere, whether it's TPA and whatnot. This is one of those things where we can, it'd be easier to get funding elsewhere than for the human services and whatnot. So it's something definitely to think about if we do have money left. Like, I think it is important to put as much as we can afford to kind of see these projects similar to our beachfront complex to show that we're putting skin in the game, and so we can go to TPA, go to Tallahassee and whatnot and say we're trying our best and we need to help for sure.
And if in doing that, we do get some matching funds, that will free up some of the money that we're committing now, if we, get on it and match our deadlines.
Right.
Mr. McBoy.
I think we all, when we started the infrastructure list, we were looking at 70, 60, 100,000 sort of numbers, and we were kind of like, okay, we're on a roll, let's approve these. But then as we get into the million, a million here, a million there, 2 million here, I agree with a little bit of the caution that I would probably say on the roads, remember that with the bond, that was if I remember right, a 40 million bond. And that didn't fix everything. So we're not going to fix it with 1 million, even if we double it or triple it. It'll help, but I think it's got to be in this sort of, well, let's help, let's put something into it, but let's make sure we're not.
So keep it, are you saying keep it at 1 million?
I think I would keep it at
Okay.
1 million.
All right. I think what we're doing is, at the end of this, we'll see what our numbers.
We may
Mhm,
come
and
back
we can
and
always shift.
reshuffle.
And I just, can I say something, Madam Mayor? I just want us to be cognizant of the fact that we have to keep in mind that this is not just for a certain sector of people. This is 42,000 plus people, generations from now.
Right.
That will reap the benefits of the investments that we make today. And that's what I keep saying to myself when we're looking at this, is like, who is going to benefit from this money? How do we get 10-fold, 20-fold, 30-fold out of it down the road from now? So the people who are sitting here 10 years from now can thank the commission that's sitting here now for doing a wise investment versus being frivolous, like what happened with the penny sales tax. And we all know how that went.
Yeah, what happened when you got $19 million, what do you have to show for it?
Right.
Mr. Brown.
I did just want to mention, when we're talking about grant funds as terms of infrastructure, typically, especially the TPA and with FDOT LAP funds, typically you're not going to get grant money for something that would be viewed as maintenance.
Right.
Something that the city should have
exactly.
been maintaining. So usually, like, some of the money I've gotten, it's because we're looking at repurposing an existing road and converting it from a 2-way to a 1-way and making it like a complete streets methodology, where you're adding pedestrian features and everything else. So you're kind of converting what it currently is, but something where our
You're
roads
just
are
fixing the potholes.
we're fixing
won't get money.
potholes, the road's not in a disrepair, we haven't actually had it on a maintenance plan, stuff like that. You typically do not get grant funds from. So
I
I
mean,
just wanna make
and
sure
the-
everyone
the-
understood.
The deferred maintenance in this city is so egregious. And it affects, I mean, as you drive around, I was driving around, I drive around a lot, and I was going down like C Street, B Street, E Street from Lake Avenue South. And I mean, these little cottages are so nicely kept up, and it's obviously a community. The worst part about it are the roads. The roads look like a
Yeah.
third world, country. So I agree with Commissioner Malega that this is one shot that in 10 or 15 years, they say, oh, those people had a chance to do something and they did something else. So we'll keep it at 1 million. We have consensus to keep it at 1 million.
Yes.
Okay. City Hall Annex improvements, 2 million. Have we done consensus on that one?
Can we just, when we do things like, and I brought this up to Ms. Davis, for the public, it says City Hall Annex, which makes it think like we're putting 2 million into this building. Can we just go City Annex Building? So there's no confusion on where that money's being spent on what property? This is just for staff, not just
So the annex is the one on Federal.
correct, but
Yeah, not the City Hall, the annex of City
Correct.
Hall. Yep.
We can make that change.
Commissioner Stokes?
So is this the kind of thing that we're setting this aside because we really don't know what we're getting? Do we have solid figures on there?
No, we're gonna approach that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this is just setting aside kind of like the ERP replacement so that we say, we know we have some money, now we need to go out and figure out what this really is going to cost us.
Correct.
And hopefully it's less. Commissioner Diaz.
Just curious, and I agree, I always call it just the annex. I'm just curious, what kind of like historic designations
Yeah.
does that building have?
A lot.
And how do we get money out of it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Ed Liberty. I don't know if you can hear me, but voice
Hi, Ed.
mobile. Good evening. I did check with William, and apparently the building does have a historic designation. He listed for me. He may actually be on the call, I'm not sure, but I think 2 or 3 different historic registries that the building has.
It's an important building. It
Yeah.
really is.
Very important. It houses obviously the city's museum, which is a wonderful place to visit and understand city history, but also the small bookstore and customer service, which is now in temporary space, rented space, pending the renovation.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that.
Nobody visits the building for the boxes of paper.
It makes me crazy.
Yeah,
So,
and record storage as well is there, right? Which we need to clear out.
so this is, a set aside. Hopefully it's less, but but hopefully it's not more. And-
Correct.
And we're hearing from staff that this is absolutely necessary to do this.
So do we have a running total where we
we're
are
about to
so
get it.
far
Commissioner, I'm sorry.
with the 4 in there?
No,
That's before the 4.
8,517 plus 4.
Total of everything. Is 8,517.
Can't be.
Seems like it's higher.
Okay.
Add 1 million stormwater. We kept that separate.
Okay.
because We recall stormwater is in some budget.
Oh, okay.
So you can use that.
Yeah,
I would recommend using that.
Out of this, because that's a
A bucket.
bucket. We'll call it a
We'll
bucket.
call it a bucket.
And that's not including the 650. I think our number came down because of the 656 that
Right.
Correct.
are not.
Right.
Right at this point.
656. So the 656 is not, so it includes the 4 million.
Turn your mic on for me.
2 for the city,
I can hear
that's 6, 1 for the roads, that's 7, another 1 for the fuel tank, that's 8, and then there's
Those
bunch of miscellaneous.
$517,000, right.
Plus 1.05 for the pool.
Right. At the pool.
yeah, that's
Gotta
not
add the
hearing
pool,
that.
your mark money. 1.050.
See, this would happen. Every now and then, $1 million gets lost here and there.
1050.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So that's 9,567.
About 9.5. Yeah.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I just wanted to throw this out. There is a need for the Wingfield gym roof. And the reason it's 150,000, the reason I'm bringing up is because that gym has a beautiful brand new floor. That if that roof fails, that floor will then need to be replaced again. It's 150,000 capital improvement. And I would just hate for the roof to get caved in and then we have to replace the flooring and do a lot more than what.
Is
Just
that,
the roof.
is that anywhere on our other budget requests?
It is in our capital improvement plan.
So there's money for it under the capital improvement plan?
No, it's
It's
unfunded.
unfunded.
It's unfunded.
Okay.
It's 150. Again, just to protect our investment.
Mhm. So is there any other source that we could pay for that? And do we know how much it is?
150,000.
Oh, 150.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we add that to the total? 140?
He said 140. It's
Yeah.
140.
That was
Not
150.
150, it's 140.
The roof.
The Wingfield roof,
The gym.
the gym roof. Not a million, 140, I think it's 149.
140,000.
140.
Page 29.
I would just be remiss if that
Yeah.
roof caved in and now all of a sudden. Everybody who uses it, including the sheriff's office for pals, couldn't
Mhm.
use it because our
It's a
roof caved
well-used
in.
building.
Yes.
Okay,
After
so
school
that
is
brings
packed.
us up a little bit, just over 10. All right, 9.707, we're under 10.
I think that, so is how bad of a shape, how many years left do we have on that roof? I know this past year, we decided to use the CDBG money to complete the park, I think Memorial Park.
Mhm.
But it is something that comes up for CDBG. I thought we were thinking about maybe doing it next.
Well,
year.
so,
Osborne Community Center,
Oh, that
we're
was-
thinking about, this is the
Oh.
gym.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's,
yeah, and what we decided to do instead of the Osborne was the second phase of the Memorial
Right.
Park. which
Okay.
is- yeah.
Yeah, this is for the gym, not the Osborne.
Okay, so we're at about 10 for the needs,
Okay.
which leaves us with what for our wants?
well, we're setting aside 2.5 for Congresswoman
That's right.
Rankles in case we don't know
Okay,
that total commitment's gonna be yet, but
okay.
We
So
don't
that
want-
brings us up to like 12.5.
12.5.
I do think it's likely we're gonna need to invest in the ball fields. I know we're
Mhm.
holding on that for now, but it's still, I'd
Agreed.
hate to
Mhm.
not, I think we need to leave some
Okay,
space open here,
Okay.
just for things.
so that,
come
let's
up.
say bring this up to, with the next, would be 12 million, 11
About
million?
13.1 now. Little 13.
I see on here under quality of life, code enforcement, community enhancement program, and I'd also like to talk about the mobility plan. Those are two things that I
We're-
think.
We're getting,
Well,
we're
yeah.
going down this
Mhm.
list.
Yes.
We're
is
going
that
down
what we're- Yeah,
Yeah. So we're just starting with the basic needs. So, and including the, you know.
Oh, I thought you said once. Thought we were
Okay,
on
just-
once.
We're just getting we're going to our wants. We're just
Okay.
finishing up our needs. So with the ballpark, even though it's set aside, included and the roof for the gym, we're at about 13 million.
Yes. A little over
What did
13.
we set aside for the ballparks? I was gonna suggest
650.
300.
650 is what we came. 650.
56.
Well, that's the ask for the whole thing. I'm wondering. since
Well,
we
that's why
said
we're gonna have a meeting about what we're gonna actually do on the ball fields, but that at least gives us that money. We can always use it for other stuff if we don't spend it all.
That's right.
So, because there are some questions about the actual use up there,
Mhm.
soccer fields, things like that. So, okay, so now we have Mr. Finance,
Oh,
how much money do we have on our wants?
Okay. Give me for a second.
Sure. Not a pop quiz.
I have 656 in addition to the $9.7 million that we have a commitment to.
And did the 9.7 include the 140 for the roof?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The ballpark of 656. 2.5.
No, we're still doing the needs. Slow down.
Okay, I have all the needs. Yeah. So now it's do you want me to add the 656 to the needs?
I think so.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I think that's more
656.
in a want, so I'd split it and put half in, but
Yeah.
that's me.
We'll put an asterisk on it.
Right,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
I like that
We
idea.
have to have a meeting just to determine how we're gonna use that.
Because if
Because
we
some
end up
number,
having the meeting that we need to move forward with the current plan, but we spent the money, you know.
Right.
Well, all these numbers are
Flexible.
flexible. right?
Mhm.
So right now I have 10,363,611 after I put the ballpark in
And the roof.
and the roof.
Okay.
and then we have to add the 2.5 million for the housing,
So
because that's
then
already committed.
2.5 housing. So that
So
gets,
bad at math.
that's 12,863,611. If I have everything captured.
Okay. All right, so how much does this leave us for the next step?
Well, again, we need to really start pulling apart the pieces now. The pieces being different categories.
Right, that's our next list.
Okay.
We have the development, infrastructure, environmental sustainability and quality of life.
So if we go to refer back to my email on page 2, the next section to talk about is the suggested allocations for ARPA funds. And so in this area, we talk about connected to the priority discussion that that I shared with you early in the conversation, that these items related to the top 4 priorities.
Okay.
And for instance, development. Now, we already talked about the affordable housing with the 2.5. So we already discussed that. Other elements that could be addressed under development based on conversations that I had among commissioners. One is housing, rental, down payment assistance, revolving loan programs. So I don't have any specifics in that, but as we talk about the housing needs, one of the major issues that the commission wanted to address is affordable housing, and part of that whole conversation on affordable housing relates to issues in assistance to the community as far as down payment or down payment on housing, down payment on rental, creating a revolving fund where it's not necessarily granting money, but providing funds for people to borrow from. And then as they repay it, we put it back into a fund to help and continue that circulation of money to assist the community. So
Another thing we spoke about, I think, and I know I've mentioned it, is, direct financial assistance to a homeowner that needs an air conditioner or a hot water heater or things like that. I know that Pahokee and Belgrade, and I believe Riviera are doing things like that. I spoke with the mayor of Belgrade and Pahokee, and I said, well, how are you doing that? Do you have financial affidavits? How do you decide who gets the money? And they're pretty much like, we look at the house. And it's obvious they need help. So I think that is something that we can look at. Because, quality of life stuff, air conditioning, buy somebody a big old air conditioner to stick in the wall and their life improves tremendously. So we have the 2.5 that we set aside for Congresswoman Frankel. So let's just go down, housing rental down payment assistance revolving loan program. Mr. McBoy, you have you both have a light on, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I think Mr.
first,
Diaz
but
was first.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, so I mean, this is something, obviously, the last meeting I had brought up, we can have our own workshop on this, and I think maybe we should, so I wonder what, how should we go about this? Like, do we talk about committing money today? I think we should talk about what's needed. Obviously, there's a crisis out there. We heard from a lot of people that night, and it was a tough meeting listening to everyone's situation. And there are people out there who have reached out and want to help. And I think, I look at this list and it's like the four things: the housing, rental, down payment assistance, and they're great. And we need some sort of I don't know what the answer is, obviously, what the specific answer that's going to solve all our problems, but we need to have this conversation.
Nothing will solve all our problems.
Right, and it's super complex, and I want to lean more towards what can we do to get people to own their homes and have some sort of permanence over rentals. But in the meantime, obviously, we're working on protecting renters, and I think all of that just works together, melds together. William, Mr. Waters, he's had some really good ordinances for micro communities and stuff, and it's like, I still got to meet with him and Aaron and them and talk about what else can we do in terms of I want this to be an issue where we're the most aggressive on.
Yes, I don't disagree. I think we also have to bear in mind the limitations that we do have,
Of course, yeah.
I mean, at the Times this morning, there was an article about in New York State where a lot of New Yorkers decided to move up to Ulster County on the Hudson, and people that work there can't find a place. I mean, this is not our unique problem. So I just want to bear in mind that we can't fix all the problems.
Of course,
but
yeah.
Commissioner McBoy, you're next.
I too heard very clearly the need in our meeting last Tuesday, and it's not only last Tuesday, we've been hearing it for a while on housing needs, whether it's rental or owning, and it's extreme. I somewhat agree with the mayor that we can't. It's just such an expensive problem that we're not going to fix it single-handedly. So I'm particularly interested in the ideas, somewhat like we do with, or what the state does with the water and sewer. It's a revolving fund. You borrow out of it, it goes back in, and that gives a lot more mileage to it. The particular place I see it is when people are being asked for 3 months rent and the rent is $2,000 or $1,500. Who has $4,500 sitting around to drop into it?
Right.
I think that's a place where, as a revolving fund, we could help a lot.
How could
And
we
in
secure
theory,
that?
what's that?
How could we secure that? If we're doing it as a loan, even a no interest loan, and it's not going into we can't put a lien against the house because it's not a homeowner. How do we secure the fact that we're going to get paid back?
I don't know the answer to that. It's definitely not my expertise on it, and it's a fair concern. And I'm sure that, just like banks that loan money, they know that a certain percentage is not going to come back, and we would probably have to live with that knowledge too.
That's
But
unsecured funds.
But if there's a good conversation to have, one thing that really stood out to me from the self program.
that's just what I'm thinking. Very high.
They have low interest. I forget what it was. And one of the questions was, man, and unsecured loan, like how risky is that? And his default rate was single digits. It was
Yeah,
like,
very low.
yeah, below 5%. So
No, so we have that program going already, right?
But it wouldn't do anything like down payment.
yeah, so.
No, I understand.
But maybe we can look at like their rubric and their application process, like what is it that they're doing to, it's not a secured loan, but they're clearly doing something to make sure. I think people, when they're good intention, they're in a tough spot, and they want to help themselves, they will work extra hard to pay it back for sure, but I'm sure they have, maybe they have some kind of insight.
You might want to partner with them.
Yeah,
That's just what I was gonna say, because they offered to have an on-site person
Yep.
for us, and this I would say, and I believe the number that sticks in my head was 60K.
Yep.
I would say doing 60K of the ARPA just for that would be a very wise
Program.
self.
Self.
Solar energy loan fund.
Yeah,
Not just solar though.
it's not just so, exactly.
Bad name.
So I guess my vote
That's a
would
great
be,
idea.
yeah, fund the self guys, get whatever expertise and have them, if they're willing and if they think it's something they know, help us design a revolving
Yeah.
fund
Yeah.
down payment program.
I'm with you. When I hear unsecured loan, it blew me away when I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
like that's
Yeah.
just, doesn't sound like a great idea, but the numbers
If
blew me away.
He's figured out how to make it work.
I would like us to think about when we are talking about creating generational wealth, if we could come up with a down payment assistance match program. So meaning they have $3,000 down, we can match them with another $3,000 down towards their down payment for home purchasers.
To be repaid.
No, match program. So they have to have skin in the game. They can't just apply for a down payment, but if they have 5,000, we could make it to a $5,000 cap.
And they also have to qualify for a loan.
Correct. Well, that would be part of the, yeah. I mean, this is something we could actually partner with the CRA on because they are doing affordable home
Mhm.
ownership programs right now.
Yep.
And a lot of those programs where that money was initially, the initial down payment was invested, that money's gone away from the government. So if we could come up with a match money to partner with the CRA on some of these homes that are being created, I think that would be a step up, a hand up, not a handout. And creating that generational wealth, because now we have a tax basis that we're helping add to, right?
Right.
So we're getting a return on our investment in the long run.
So it would be a gift, not a loan.
Correct, but this again, match,
Well, right.
yeah,
And the,
not just a free handout,
Right.
just they have to have skin in the game, pre-qualified and
and the county has, I think their program is called CHIP maybe, or CHIP. They have a loan program as well that probably worth
Are
looking into.
people be involved with that or is that
I think it's-
unincorporated?
I think it's unincorporated, just county, but yeah.
Ms. Davis.
there's nothing in
I
the
see you
city
have
right now.
Right.
Yes, I was just gonna add that this category was added, or this suggestion was added based on the directive that staff received from this body regarding the housing crisis declaration. So certainly nothing specific was thought about, but I thought that this would be a good time to talk about putting some money aside to be part of whatever options we have out of that directive to look at what can we do to assist in this particular situation. So all of the collective information that you're bringing to the table, we will explore and drill down into it to see how we can develop that into a program. And there will be much more discussion at an upcoming date.
Is it appropriate at this point in time to put some numbers to it? Because we have three things that I've heard. One was 60K to help partner with self, some sort of amount for the revolving down payment loan, and some sort of amount for matching. Excuse me, some amount for I guess it's called a down payment for rental, in whatever, the 3 months. Yours was the purchase. We also have the
Oh,
rental.
the moving expenses,
That would be-
security, first class.
Yeah,
And,
maybe that's the right name
And I
for it.
would like not to forget, just some direct funds, my hot water heaters.
Mhm.
Sorry to interrupt. The city attorney had his hand up.
Oh, Mr. Torcivia,
Hello, how are you all this evening?
good.
The conversation about assisting with home ownership, great conversation. Just reminders that obviously you're then getting into questions of qualifying people for loans. Are you going to do that? Are you going to have mortgages? Are you going to, how do you secure it? But one easy way, because I know we're going through some Doug Lade and it's doable, but it's a lot of work. You might want to think about talking to the county and their SHIP program. is there a contract we could have with the county where they do all the paperwork? They're already in that business rather than us reinventing the wheel. And we just set the parameters. If they're willing to do that, that might be worth, as opposed to, as I said, reinventing the wheel and becoming a bank, which is not, I think, anybody on staff's expertise.
Yeah, that SHIP program is, I mean, it's my understanding, it's super hard to get into. Obviously, it's the entire county and they only have so much, but I think that's a fair point.
Or at least use their guidelines.
I would just like us
But
to.
I was kind of thinking, actually, if I could, almost like we did with legal aid, where legal aid has their program and we did a contract to kind of, for us, I wonder if the county be willing to do a program for us where, you know, they have their administrative staff, we set the guidelines that we want, and they're essentially administering our program and presumably charging us an administrative fee that hopefully is a lot less than what it would cost us to administer a program like that.
But I don't see us, I don't hear us saying we would become the mortgage company. What I hear us is that somebody tries to buy a house, they get approved for a loan, and we match what their down payment would be. We would not be the.
Up to a certain amount,
Correct,
correct.
correct. We would not be the administrators of a mortgage. It would be just
No.
the assistance on the down payment.
Okay.
Which
And would you want those homes deed restricted so they couldn't be sold for a number of years or had to be affordable for a number of years?
You lean against the house.
Well, that's what I said, if we partner with the CRA, who's already doing affordable home ownership, and bring this in as a double component, that if someone's going through the program and they're, you know, they need help with the down payment, the CRA's already done this a million times. They've already got the, you know, the footwork in place,
Right.
because they did the 80-20 back when the NSP2 first came
That's
out.
right.
So they already have the infrastructure in place for that.
And the expertise.
And if I may, Madam Whitmer,
Sure.
just to piggyback and emphasize what Mr. Torcivia mentioned, I think we want to piggyback to do this internally. When we're talking about efficiencies and whatnot, this is very burdensome.
We don't have the staff.
We
to
don't
do
have
it.
the staff.
Madam Mayor, all programs, as we go through this list, every program that I may suggest or that we talk about
Mhm.
would not be something that we carry out. It will be partnering with other organizations who are, of course, skilled and experienced to do that
Expertise.
and provide the wherewithal to do that. So we have a number of programs out there, nonprofits and
So we
organizations.
can hook up with.
Yeah, so all this is about partnering.
Okay. Commissioner Stokes.
Yeah, I just think that this is all very amazing stuff, and I know Vice Mayor McVoy asked maybe we should start putting numbers to this. I don't think we can right tonight. This is
Yeah.
the first, you know, the other list we just went through is
Finite.
capital
Capital.
needs that we know and documented, we know exactly how much they cost, or we have a good ballpark of. All of these things we're not sure of, and I think a criteria that we're gonna wanna look at is, you know, how much money are we allotting for a particular program and how many people will it help?
I agree. I don't think we can come up with numbers.
So I don't know that we have the information here,
We're talking
but
about concepts.
Mhm.
I think given where we are right now, I think homeless prevention should be a huge goal of ours, even though, because you're not just impacting the people who are about to lose their housing, you're also, it impacts the entire community. And I know there are people out there that think we can police our way out of this problem. We can't. So I think the more we can do to address the actual root cause of the problem and try to keep people in their homes, and the longer we can stretch our bucks there, the better, the more people we can help. So that's
What's your suggestion? for that?
everything that we're talking about. So with all the housing, if they get priced out of a house and they need help moving into another one and they need to borrow that down payment assistance, that helps them get from one apartment to another apartment.
Would the self program help that?
No, and I'm glad you brought that up because we're getting there to quality of life issue. Sorry, city manager.
Oh, that's okay.
We definitely worked on a lot. We've talked a lot about that particular issue, and this is really specifically why I would love to have, you know, a workshop devoted to this issue, because there's so many things that I know I've worked with Carmen and others, and we've discussed ideas since literally since day one I've gotten here. And but we haven't maybe effectively shared that completely yet, and because, you know,
allowed?
because we're not allowed to, so I would love a workshop just on that issue and resolving it, and I think the only thing that maybe we can commit money to, although I don't have the exact number, is the South program, like Commission, I don't remember it. I remember it being around there, it was like 60 to 75,000.
That's
It was
wow.
around there, but you know, that might be the only thing we can actually commit a cost to like today.
Okay.
This is Ed. We can look it up, but I believe it's a neighborhood of $50,000 to $75,000 per year over a 2 to 3 year period. If I remember correctly.
Okay, well, we can find that out.
Yeah, we will get that number and I'll forward it to the city manager, of course.
Thank you. Commissioner Malega.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, we're not going to solve homelessness and we're not going to change. And we have to think about everybody in the city. And I don't want us to forget our small businesses.
Right, that's, yeah.
The majority of the cities in Palm Beach County have done something for their businesses. And when we're talking about these numbers, right, putting pen to paper, you know, again, I'm in favor of a mobility plan. I'm in favor of things that we're going to get longevity out of, and I think a mobility plan is one of them. Helping our business owners who keep
Loans.
who keep people employed, who keep the economy running is something we really need to be, you know, forward thinking about. When we think about people who are displaced, which is how I refer to them, not homeless, because I think everybody has a home. Things that we can do are, one of the projects I worked on when I first came on was getting with Ed and Lauren, and I said everybody should have access to clean drinking water. If we could add 5 more of those water fountains throughout the city, now we're giving more access. Like, how do we? Why are you looking like that?
Don't they have water in their house?
No, I'm talking about the homeless
Oh, okay,
displaced.
okay.
So the displaced individuals who are in our city, if we can add more water fountains, like how do we do stuff like that? That if we can't prevent it, how do we help lessen the blow and make it easier? I mean, we can't put up fruit trees everywhere for everyone to pick fruit from. But, you know, those are the things that I would like us to think when we have that workshop, like what can we do that's impactful on the longevity? Because if we pay someone's rent for 3 months,
Oh, I don't.
number one, the landlord's got to fill out the forms. And the
I was not
county,
advocating for
the
that.
county, I think, is still sitting on like almost $12 million in rental assistance because the landlords don't want to fill out the forms
Like
to get the money.
the city manager said, it partnering with them, and we've talked about getting people here in the city, like even a case manager that can help get people connected to those services. So we know that, like, how can we stretch these dollars as far as we can? Like we've talked about with matching grants, and when people are in vulnerable positions, you don't have to wait for the Guatemalan Mayan Center to find a veteran and her several children sleeping in a car in a parking lot, because we have people that can help maybe manage them and get them hooked into resources. Because right now, you know, the Guatemalan Mayan Center is not just only serving their own population, they're taking on the burden of where the rest of the county is. So.
As I listened the other night to the people that were speaking about, you know, how the crisis that they're in, here was a question that came to my mind, and we have to be really careful getting those addresses. Not everybody's address was there. I would like to have almost a list of the addresses of the people that came in with the problems that they're having with the giant raises in rent, and make a distinction between the two of, there's 2 different classes in my view. There is a person who has owned a house, like I've owned a house for a number of years. My insurance is going up, yes, but there's no, in my mind, reason to make it $500 a month more, $600 a month more, okay? There is a different situation though with people that have recently in this inflated market bought a duplex or a fourplex. Let's say they spent $800,000. Their mortgage, their carrying costs, by nature of the fact that they're taking out mortgages and they have the higher expenses, are by definition, those rents are going to have to be higher. I'm not saying it's fair or unfair, but I think it's a really good distinction to make, a practical, you know, are these folks, and I would love to actually have a volunteer, like go through PAPA and see what the difference is, because I believe that there's a difference in taking advantage of a situation, and I can get $400 a month more because I can, or I have to get $400 a month more because my mortgage is that high. I think that's an important distinction to make, and to you know, sort of publicly say, you know, where are you coming with these crazy rent raises?
That's a difficult land use problem to address because the people from that community who are here to put themselves out on blast like that with address and everything, it takes a tremendous amount of courage because a lot of that community is, they're the ones who are being taken advantage of because they're unaware that they have rights, even if they are undocumented, that they can defend themselves against these kinds of practices. So it's like.
But
it's
they're
difficult.
asking for help, and I think that comes with a bit of a quid pro quo.
It's huge, yeah, and it's huge that, people turn up here to say that. It's certainly just the first step, but yeah, it's hard to collect that data, and then who knows?
Well,
how-
they give their, I mean, I think most
Right.
people gave their addresses.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying like, typical day to day when in terms of reporting things and then also, how many handshake leases do we have
Mhm.
out there? Like it's always a difficult
But I think we have, like, from the other night, a pretty good group
gauge. Yeah,
to just say, what is of that group, of those 50 people or whatever, how many, where do they fall?
right.
Because I think that we need to, I just think that's an important distinction.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So Commissioner McCoy?
Sort of in that line, one of the things that we said at that last meeting was that, yes, we're all in favor of doing a declaration of emergency. That's sort of just saying the obvious that we agree that there is one. But it's the first step. I think that a number of us said we want to do something else concrete to follow up with that. And the one that relates to the state ruling or the state laws is you need a study. And that exactly might be one of the ways that we move forward. Because I think you make a good point, Mayor, that if somebody buys a building and they pay a bunch for it, they're going to need to cover that. On the other hand, understanding better, why did the price of that house go up as much as it did? Are there other policies that we are doing that could either lower that or reduce that increase? Should we be looking at that? I think there are a number of angles that a study would make a lot of sense, and we should move fairly quickly to try to define both what are the state requirements for the study and what are our own information needs, which might include that.
And how much does a study cost?
I think it's no question, I'm cautious when we say, well, we really can't do anything. How much does it cost? We are talking about ARPA funds, of which a very focused part of it is to help people in need.
Which didn't.
I don't
we
think
still
it
need
has
to know
to
how much it
cost.
costs. That's all.
What's that?
We just still need to know how much a study like that would cost.
Well,
And then we're working, me and the city attorney, we're working together and moving forward and getting that information.
Okay.
So we're working with, what are the consultants out there? We've received some suggestions, so you'll hear more from us on that.
Okay.
And we're obtaining that information.
there are also people who in academia who may have an interest in helping
Mhm.
at either for free or as part of studies or a very reasonable rate.
And you'll
So
follow up with that as well.
Yes, we're working on that as we speak.
Mr. Stokes?
I think part of that study should include what the downstream costs are to this, because we talk about, we want to make sure that we are not just helping one, vulnerable part of the community, that we're helping everybody, but these costs trickle down like crazy, because then you end up having to traditionally rely on police more to go out and shuffle the unhoused around. And then if they end up, if we don't have the shelters to send them to, which by the way, has been a legal opinion that if you don't have an alternate place for somebody to sleep, you cannot tell them that they are not allowed to sleep in public. It's not a matter of, I want everybody in the world to come to Lake Worth and sleep outside, but you legally cannot tell somebody who has no alternate place to go. So we need to find out from the county, do they have enough beds? We need to advocate for more beds. We need to do what we can. And I think a study is going to help really dig into all of the effects. And trust me, I've gotten a lot of emails and I've had a lot of people do some very inappropriate things because they're nervous about the amount of unhoused people in this town. And it's not us following the law, saying if you don't have a place to go, we can't kick you out. It is, what can we do to lower the risk of seeing more people end up losing their house? So I think the study is absolutely critical for us to understand the nature of the problem, for us to dissect into all the different things that we can do to help lessen the effects of where we are right now. But I do want to talk about the small businesses really quickly too, because something that I always thought, when we're talking long-term, something I'd like for us to explore that I've seen other communities doing is having, the city actually owns shops. They put up these cute little shops and they own them and they can rent them out for starter businesses, because right now we can give money to developers to build commercial real estate. And then in 10 years from now, what's the price of that rent? You know, like there's some short fixes, or we can give somebody a grant, but once that money is gone, it's gone. But there are other models out there that I think are worth investigating, of just seeing what are other communities doing. I know you said, let's think outside the box. Is there a way we could have a couple shops, long-term, that are used for this as startup businesses? One place that I was reading about was amazing because, it was a very low entry point for somebody to come in and start a business. And then when they were successful there, they actually started moving into the empty shops in the downtown area because they had their low entry point into it. They established it. We know that the success rate of businesses isn't always super high. So this is a way of like a low entry. You've gotten your success, go fill a shop that's been vacant, allow the next person to come in and do theirs. So I just think it's something worth looking into that I always found interesting. So I think with a lot of these things, we're going to need in-depth conversations about how do we support our small businesses. There's like 8 different options that we could go in. Which one makes sense? Tear them, like dissect each of them and their merits.
Thank you, Commissioner Diaz.
That's a really great example, because that's something I have definitely talked about with fellow land use activists, whatever you want to call them, and reformists, because there are those examples that help small businesses. I think that's a critical part. I mean, it really is related to the affordability of this town as well. And that's why I had brought up previously in a budget meeting, like I would love to have some kind of money set aside to bring in outside counsel so that, we can sit down with Glenn, with William, and we can kind of take a look at our comp plan, take a look at our LDRs, see what we can do, because it's been a while since we've taken a hard look at the kind of land use policy. So to figure out what can we do, like those innovative programs here, to help encourage that, because something that really stands out, and starting with the study, one, it's a requirement if we want to eventually go with the referendum for sure. But also I think there's something that often gets overlooked in Lake Worth Beach, and there's this kind of perception that we need more higher end, or we need higher tax base that always equates to more money, and it does to some degree, but it also discounts long-standing citizens. Some of our longest standing businesses are west of the train tracks here, and they've been here for as long as I can remember, well over a decade, and we often don't discuss what that contribution is to our local economy. And to Commissioner Malega's point, how do we help these small businesses? Because I hear from them all the time that I want to improve my business, but I have to pay 12 grand in impact fees, and that's just way out of our budget. What can we do to help them improve those businesses? I mean, that
Sounds like a workshop.
it's a workshop. There's so much to talk about, and it's things that are definitely been on my radar. Things of
Our city runs on small businesses.
our city runs on small business. We're famous for that. Small, non-franchise, non-chain businesses. The good stuff. What people want, and that's, I think, we really need to work hard to focus on protecting them, and because that's going to maintain affordability.
When I finally moved here permanently in 1979, there was only one franchise in this town, that was Eckert's. And a friend of mine brought his friend up, and she was like, and a land use planner, and she's like, there's no franchise. It's all, I said, right. It was, downtown. It was the Central Market. It was the department store, Fountains. I mean, it's Joanne's Fab. It was all of that's going on. And it would be nice to get back to that. Commissioner Malega, you're like,
I am a franchise, so easy with all that. Franchises are not all bad. We are still independently owned. We still paid to have a name. A couple things. So I'd actually written down incubator program, which is what Commissioner Stokes was just alluding to. When I started my company in 2006, I went through a program in Delray that was amazing. It was called the TED Center Incubator. It was put on through the CRA. I spent $200 a month for my rent, and I got to go through an incubator program that taught me how to write a business plan, how to do a strategic plan, how to be successful.
Yeah.
And it was literally in a brand new building across the street from the police station on Atlantic Avenue. It was prime location, $200 a month for my rent for a year. But as I became more and more successful, then your rent goes up. And then eventually I was like, I'm not paying that. I got to go. But it's a great program. It has a lot of moving parts, but just the people that I know who went through that program, 15 businesses are still in business today. And that's the impact that you want to leave, right? Not paying rent or paying utility bill is, giving people who want to be a new home, a new business owner tools. But that also takes people who have to come in and give their talents. My mentor was a retired federal judge, so I scored, right? But it's getting those people in place. The one thing I will say about the conversation that happened last Tuesday when I wasn't here, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, as a business owner who relies on PBSO to patrol my personal property, you cannot sleep on my property. You cannot defecate on my property. You cannot plug your phone into my electric bill. You cannot scare off my patrons at 11 o'clock at night or at 3 o'clock in the morning. So there needs to be a clear message that yes, we are helpful, and we have been passing laws and resolutions and ordinances in this city for the past year and a half as a board. But at the same time, PBSO has my full authority to move people along who want to camp out on my property. You cannot do so because it's bad for business. It's harmful for the community. And there are resources out there, and there are places where everybody can seek shelter at the end of the night. It's just if they want to. And Heidi is one of the displaced in our community who has educated me on why the people who sleep on the streets at night do, because they don't want to give up the things that they don't want to give up. So let that be known that you cannot just sleep anywhere in this city. People own their property, they pay for their rent, and we have to protect those people.
I think it would be good to hear from legal on all of this. There are court cases that we're being sued right now for a panhandling. I think this is a conversation that we need to have. And it needs to be done in a way that's using current information and how many beds are available, because and Captain Bayer should be part of this conversation. I think it is definitely a conversation we need to have, because he's told me that if there aren't beds available, he cannot move them. He can't. There's
From private property, as long as you have a no trespassing sign up, you need to move.
There's differences between private. Yeah, I think this is definitely it's a very worthy conversation to be had. And it's easy for anybody to try to simplify any problem. That's just not the way the real world works. So there are lots of pieces involved in this conversation. So I think we need to have it. I don't think we need to have it.
I'm not trying to simplify it. I'm just saying that there's two sides to every story.
Right.
And as much as we want to think of taking care of those people, as a business owner, I can't have somebody sleeping on the bench in front of my gym. That's chasing business away from my livelihood.
And
which, by the way, that livelihood trickles down to 6 employees and the electric utility bill that I pay, and that money trickles down, and that trickle down effect happens on a bigger scale when you start losing clients and customers.
And I would like to see a robust conversation about the proposal that happened about decriminalizing the home, people sleeping in the park. I cannot support, and I agree, we should have legal involved in the conversation, but I have people writing to me now about they're already taking up shit in the park. They're already, before they send their kids out to the park, they have to pick up the needles. Those parks are for everybody. I cannot imagine. I mean, we looked at last couple of years ago, John Prince Park. I will not allow, I cannot philosophically say it's okay to set up your tent in Bryant Park.
They
or
were
on the beach.
legally were obligated to allow
Well,
them
we're
to
gonna-
do that
we're
until
gonna-
they built more housing.
And
That's why they opened up that extra I mean, this is
So
a
we're gonna
huge
talk-
conversation we need
It's
to
a
have.
huge conversation. I don't think it's really for tonight.
Right.
It did come up, and I think that we do need to involve legal before we have any changes in ordinance. If we talk about studies, we need to talk about.
And I also thought that's why we had pre-agenda meetings, was to talk about anything that was to come before staff, that money was to be spent, that you said earlier, Commissioner Diaz, and when you said it, I actually wrote it down, with no notice, it's like it's intentional. And we agreed as a body
Mhm.
that any conversations that were going to involve, or any research that was going to involve staff, time and money, that we would talk about it at a pre-agenda meeting and get 100% consensus before it was brought forward. And some of the things that happened last Tuesday were never discussed at a pre-agenda meeting and did not have full consensus.
I think we're getting
That's all
off
I'm
track
saying.
here.
So, okay, so I agree with you. It is obviously, but I believe that we have to have more than just, we have to have a conversation about those very important issues involving legal as well, including legal. Commissioner McBoy?
Thank you. I think we're all responding somewhat to seeing a lot of traffic in email to ourselves, email to the whole commission. Plenty of things on Facebook going by. There certainly is alarm in the community that, oh my gosh, we're gonna open the whole place up and anybody can panhandle and anybody can sleep anywhere they want and they can do this in front of businesses or on private property or wherever. And I think there's, like many other issues, it's a balance. What we're elected to do is balance, seek balance. And will we ever get it perfect? Will any commission ever get it perfect? No, guaranteed not. Sometimes it'll swing a little more one way, sometimes it'll swing a little more other ways. I think we all have heard the comments from churches, from businesses, very legitimate ones. Hey, I don't want people doing number 2 right in front of my business or on the back of my church or in the front of my church. I think nobody says, well, that's unreasonable to object to that. We all think that that's a real problem. I think part of what we need to do is look for solutions. One very easy one is along the direction that you raised, Commissioner. Are thirsty, maybe we ought to have some more water for them. If people have to have bodily functions, maybe we ought to have some public restrooms that people can have access to. I was coming back from a meeting on Sunday. I don't want to get too detailed, but I wasn't going to make it all the way home on my bike. So I had a key and went into City Hall and used the bathroom here. Not everybody has that option. We should make sure that there's at least some minimal levels, and that would address several problems, get it off of the thing. I think, you know, clearly we do, as we address these things, have to take into account the legal context. People in the community are not aware that we are being sued because of an ordinance that we have on the books for panhandling.
Okay, then we have,
I'm-
I'm going to cut in just for a second. if you
Well,
don't mind.
let me finish, please.
Well, let me just add one thing. The panhandling ordinance, I've explained this to as many people as I can, is a separate issue because we do know that cities have been sued successfully about the panhandling ordinance. So that's a different
Exactly.
story.
That's what I was going to say, is that I'm not a lawyer, you are, but my guess is, my prediction is that unless we change our ordinance, we will probably lose that lawsuit, which means costs and
Which
a bunch of other complications. for us.
And we discussed that at a pre-agenda meeting.
So,
I think, okay, go ahead.
and
finish.
similarly, the situation with what our ordinances say about sleeping in public. If the county does not have places for them, we certainly as a city don't have places. And if the county doesn't have them, we probably have legal exposure with that as well. How do we balance that? I totally agree with what Commissioner Malega says. I really don't want people sleeping on the front of my business property. I understand that. That's not an unreasonable concern. However, we have to balance that with our legal exposure. If we haven't provided something else, you probably are at risk if you make it illegal to sleep.
I'm going to.
How do we deal with that?
Okay, I'm going to pick up on something that Commissioner Malega said, which was, we have agreed to a pre-agenda meeting.
Agreed to what?
Pre-agenda meetings, to bring things up, not just, obviously, the sleeping in the park sort of thing is a complicated issue. Last week, it was, make the ordinance, change the ordinance without a robust conversation about the pros and cons of that. I think all we're asking is that before direction is given to do a change, to actually have a conversation, involve legal and find out what are the pros and cons of how to handle the situation.
And we agreed that we would all be in 100% agreement before we did that. So yes, we
I-
did.
I don't think
We
that will
agreed.
always
But
happen.
even if, I think my point is just, we do have a process for bringing things up, and bringing things up last minute at agenda at city commission meetings is something that we've had some issues with in the past year and a half. And That was just quite a bold
Especially when-
example of
Especially
that.
when not all of us, I mean, I wouldn't do that if you were out of town or if any, I mean, if it's something that's gonna be impactful for our city. I would just think the professional respect would have been to, let's make sure we have this conversation at the next pre-agenda meeting when we're all present and we can
Right.
really have a robust, honest conversation and figure out how we're gonna fix it and how we're gonna move forward.
Yeah, have a conversation first. Commissioner Diaz.
Yeah, I'm just gonna point out, I had brought that up in a pre-agenda meeting quite a while ago, at least on the aggressive panhandling in those ordinances. Because, you know, there are two sides and there is a lot of misunderstanding in terms of what the intention is and what the goal is. But the reality is, yeah, we don't want people sleeping in our businesses, but laws exist for that. Things like trespass, battery, false imprisonment, all those things that are addressed in those ordinances already exist in criminal law. And it's more of a matter of allowing the deputies to do what they need to do when possible, but also not force people into this like revolving door of criminality, right? If you get written up for an ordinance, that can quickly escalate to you miss a court date, you have a bench warrant, so on. And we need to do our part. And I'm gonna suggest moving on down the list because we kind of got sidetracked, but I am looking forward to having that robust conversation because I think if people listen here, it'll be
Before we
great.
make any changes in the ordinance, I
Right.
would like to have that. I mean,
Right,
well,
of
no,
course.
the
Yeah.
attorney, the staff was directed to change the ordinance.
They were?
It's
No,
no,
I
it's
don't
on,
think so.
it's on the agenda because we had discussed, I had discussed the aggressive panhandling quite a while ago.
It was pretty clear,
Yeah.
do what you need to do to get rid of it. So.
But it's a conversation that definitely needs to happen. But the thing is, it doesn't end there. Like, it's not just that. There needs to be another side to it. Just like, declaring a state of emergency, we need to step up to the plate and do what we need to do to help people and to not be in that situation. It's similar and it's on the list for quality of life.
But you don't think we've done that with the ordinances that we've done? We've given money to financial aid. I mean, we.
I want to stop. I'm going to
Yeah.
stop us right here. And I, not for any bad purpose, but we are truly trying to focus in on the ARPA funds tonight.
Right.
So I think I would ask that no changes be made to the ordinance until we do have a conversation about the implications of how can we figure out homeless people in the parks, in public spaces, before we jump into, we're very careful about certain things that just seemed like it was pretty much, go and do it. So I would ask that we step back just a little bit and talk about it and have a conversation before we do that change. Involving
I think
legal.
we all agree.
We can do
to
that, yeah.
Well,
That's
okay,
fine.
but
Yeah.
that's, okay.
I didn't get the impression. Maybe the impression is there because we clearly heard from a noticeable chunk of our community. And I would point out, a number of people have pointed out that we heard from some of the people that you might expect, farm workers who already have a number of other difficulties, but we also heard from a wide range of incomes. And I think all of us have heard examples. I
And we're
mentioned
doing
that.
what we can to address it, I think. I don't mean to cut you off, but I think we're working towards that.
I,
So I'm gonna-
I
I'm
think
gonna
there are
ask us to
differing
move on.
views. I think as to whether we've addressed it as much as we can. I think there's quite differing views on that. But I think maybe the impression that, we want something now was coming out of, hey, these people are hurting and they have needs right now. It is pretty easy to see that if you are evicting people or if people are having to leave because they can't suddenly manage to come up with $500 a month, that's going to lead to an increase in homelessness. And one of the pieces that we need to address quickly is, are we going to, on top of not being sympathetic to that, make it criminal for them to be forced into a bad
Which is a
situation?
great topic for conversation.
Yeah. And
Commissioner Stokes.
Right, so, related to this and not trying to jump down, but I don't know if the homelessness support programs, behavioral mental health initiatives, crisis intervention teams, the Treasury and the federal government, when they did this, actually, wrote a report on advising cities to take up things like mental health and crisis intervention team pilot programs, knowing that that will have a long-term effect. And if you talk to Captain Bear, he'll tell you that his people want to be fighting and catching bad guys, dealing with criminal behavior, and he will tell you being homeless is not a crime. So something that we've been trying to get on the books for a while is working with other groups like the Lord's Place, who have people with lived experiences that can go out and engage with people that are unsheltered and try to get them connected and be proactive and engage with them in a more humane way than, prison. There are alternatives. So that's something I hope, we're not causing the likely increase in unhoused people. That has nothing to do with anybody sitting up here. None of us had anything to do with it. What I think we're trying to do is prepare for the likelihood of that and then say, what other things can we add to help mitigate the consequences? So the crisis intervention team, those kinds of initiatives, I see those as long lasting, as a shift.
It would be a short, I mean, it'd be a.
It's a pilot.
Pilot.
Yes, and it's to show the effectiveness of it in a shift. And would love, and I know our city manager has been doing a great job connecting with people in the county. Because eventually, if we have fewer people in our jails, the county will save money. And, you can start to see a shift in the way that resources are spent and not criminalizing certain behavior. But it doesn't, it's not an either or. Either or thinking is very it's bad thinking. So we will have more conversations about it. And if we, I advocating strongly for putting money towards some of these initiatives as a pilot to help get us through these next few bumpy years. And to show that there is a better way to approach these problems.
In terms of the crisis intervention team, do you have a model?
I've been working, we're investigating it. That's why nothing tonight is going to be solved, but
This is our first conversation. That we
there are successful models in Eugene, Oregon, and Denver, all over the country. There are a lot of successful models, and it is something that we're investigating.
Yes. Okay, Commissioner Malega? And then, Mr. Diaz?
Oh, I was gonna, if we, I don't want to steal the city manager's thunder, but are we
It's okay.
skipping down to quality of life? It seems to be
The mobility, we skip right over the mobility.
I know, we can come back, I
That's
think,
given.
do that infrastructure and environment, quality of life. I mean, it seems like we're on this tangent, but
Right.
it's similarly, just like,
I'd like to go down the list.
right, similarly, just like CIT, we've talked a lot about grant programs, because I'm pretty close to some of the nonprofits in our community. We're really lucky. Like, this town, it seems to be a very selfless town. There's just a really high amount of nonprofits that do a lot of good for the community. And I think that's something that we can really look forward to. And one thing, that we've discussed a lot with city manager is maybe provide a pilot program, a start of a grant program to help these groups that already do amazing work. They're surely not going to solve the problem. Like Commissioner Stokes, I fear that it's going to get worse. Every time I look at what our economy is looking at like in the future, it looks like we're going to be, facing with some major problems. And I think, to your point, Mayor, there's only so much we can do as a municipality, but I think, we can do a lot. I mean,
Let's see what we
with
can
that,
do.
yeah,
Okay.
let's get together and have that talk. And I guess
Workshop.
we can bring it back to the agenda and start, because there is a lot of good work being done. And again, like, we're limited. This is why these workshops are so good, and is because it is things that have been looked at really well.
Commissioner Malega?
I'm just wondering, would it be beneficial for us to reach out to Adopt a Family, Guatemala Center, Lord's Place, and say, okay, we have this money, we want to partner with you. What programs do you have that we can put money towards, instead of reinventing the wheel and prolonging, because if people are becoming displaced, they're becoming displaced now, it doesn't get put on hold. And like Adopt a Family, they put up people, if we can help them rent 12 more apartments for the next year to put people in, because there's a shortage of housing. How do we get them here at the table? Is there a way that we could have them present to us and say, here's our top priorities, here's where we need funding, here's how the city can help for the next 12 months?
So I've actually met with a number of those groups and presented that exact idea to invite them to give a 10 presentation. So you'll see Randy in here, you'll see all the good characters, but yeah, I'll tell you right now, the number one thing that everyone asks for, and I think this is probably unfortunately out of our reach, it's to provide a very high level mental health person, you know, whether it's a psychiatrist or whatever. I think that that's tremendously expensive. That might be beyond what we can do, but you know, I would love to see something like a grant program that we started, and I had brought up, not necessarily to commit to numbers, but as an example, we set aside 100,000 and we did 60-40, 60 to immediately be sent out to the community or those groups, have some kind of grant committee, have an application process, listen to what they need, what they're doing for us already, and how can we help that? Because I can tell you, as someone who has started nonprofits, who sits on the board of many, something as simple as a $5,000 grant for a small nonprofit will have a tremendous impact. Like, I know if we give Randy a small grant, he'll, you know, I know it's going to have just way more reach than we could ever do as a
Same
city
thing with
government.
Healthier Lake Worth Beach. I mean, the money that
Exactly.
they have put into the city and the
That's a great
programs.
idea, instead of reinventing the wheel too. And I
Yeah.
see Miss Davis's light is on.
As I mentioned earlier, that's exactly
What you're doing.
what we've been doing. You know, from the conversations and issues that I hear from commission, I reach out to organizations and try to find what are they doing and how their services can better serve our community. So we have reached out to other communities, other organizations to find out what they do and whether they can service us according to the needs that we are interested in. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're already having conversations with behavioral health organizations to see what programs they have, or also find out what they can do to tailor programs according to the needs within our community. So those conversations are taking place, prepping for this type of conversation. So when we have these workshops, we will already have had some conversations with organizations. We already have organizations in mind. So the other part is similar to what Commissioner Diaz said, that we foresaw the same thing, you know, providing funds, setting up a grant program for organizations who already do good work that line up to the priorities of the commission to carry out what they do, to empower them and to broaden their ability to continue the good work that they do.
Yeah, I mean, the need is so huge. I have a friend who's terribly mentally ill. And she really can't live alone anymore. We discovered that. And I've been working with her, and I found her a little independent living place that is affordable. And it's a temporary thing because she's telling me that people are smoking crack. And, you know, so I mean, the mental health need is so dear and dire. And I feel so helpless. You know, I would like to say, let's buy a multifamily unit and you know, we all want to fix the problems. We all have the heart to fix the problems. The practicality of it is what we're facing. Mr. McBoy.
I think what I'm hearing quite a bit of consistency about is leverage, how to get the most bang for, you know, the ARPA gives us a chunk of money, but we just spent quite a bit of it. But it seems like one of the things I'm hearing a lot is having a person that connects people to other organizations may be a quite efficient way. Just somebody who's available. And I think I heard the comment, I forget what the term is, but Commissioner Stokes mentioned it, that life experience, people who
Lived experience.
That's the term I was looking for. I remember at the mayor, when we were at the woman that spoke at the Homeless Coalition Ball, was pretty amazing. You know, had lived a lot of these experiences.
Look at the
drug
foster
addiction.
kids that get dumped when they're 18.
Yeah.
With no skills.
And
Sign up
somebody
to be a foster parent, everybody.
individually reaching out. Another one that we haven't really talked about, but that I've been involved in some discussions with, and I'd like to bring this one back. Can we commit some money, even though we should have the workshop without question, and these are complicated things, with a focus on best leverage, but can we set aside, even if it's very tentative, you know, let's save some money to go into some of this stuff. The other one that I've heard some things about is, what is the role in our communities of churches that receive, you know, they don't pay taxes. They have quite a noticeable amount of land and buildings in the community. Can they be partners at this crisis sort of moment? And how can we facilitate that happening? Does the city have a role?
We do have a lot of churches, and I think our churches are fairly socially
Inclined.
You know, I know I live right across the street from Church of the Glades, and they're very, very active in different things. Mr. Diaz.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example. Church of Body Glaze are so helpful to Caring Community and Burrito Project, all the groups. There's a partnership out there, not to belabor the point, but we're lucky to live in a community that is that selfless. And I think if we did commit to designing a grant program or something, it would be tremendous. It would have a tremendous impact, and it would help alleviate a lot of the fears. Because I have those fears too, right? I see the emails, I hear them. Nobody wants, loads of trespassing and things like that, and the safety issues. We also have to recognize, that something different needs to be done. The status quo isn't great. I work on our lagoon. Obviously, we do a lot of cleanups. I see what's done to it, and we're always looking to improve. And I think we have an opportunity here. This is a great way to go. And there's so much. I think one thing that really needs to highlight as well is, policing costs are continue to climb, and in a way, a lot of this is used. I think this will help us in that regard, because in a lot of ways, we're trying to make their job easier. I'd rather them focus on like the hardcore trespassers and the really problem ones, and as opposed to someone calling PBSO for, somebody who's sleeping in the shade or whatnot. So anything we can do to help, Captain Bear and his team, to focus on what they need to focus, I think is gonna have a tremendous impact. I mean, so many things. People get the houseless community. They're often villainized, but I think like what we saw, not everyone is a born criminal. There's always going to be some outliers, but we're living in a different time. We're talking about I've talked to people who are straight up contractors and house painters. Like, they have jobs, they have businesses, but they're still houseless. So the status quo clearly isn't working. We gotta commit to doing something.
And I think as part of the conversation that we need to have about changing any ordinances about decriminalization is to get input from the PBSO and fire rescue. Because those are the
Yeah,
guys that deal with.
Certainly.
the
They see
problems
it
on the street.
firsthand.
Right. And I think, at night, I have heard terrible stories about at night what's going on in some of the parks, from citizens and from some officers. And it's just, it's troubling. What did they pass? Oh.
If you're over 18, you don't have to travel.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll talk about that. Interesting. That's going to be a challenge, but.
Yeah, that, I don't want to go there.
Yeah, let's,
My curiosity is like, whoa.
Fishermen are not gonna like that.
a child or a fishing pole. Miss David?
I just, while we were on quality of life, I wanted to just introduce the code enforcement community enhancement program. And we talked about that when we had the code enforcement workshop, and we talked about compassion, coding, and services and enforcement. Yeah, compassion enforcement, that's the term. I wanted to get it correct. But we talked about that, and we talked about how we can offer assistance to residents who are struggling to comply with our ordinances. And so we wanted to bring that to the table as we talk about ARPA.
Could that be another revolving loan fund?
Absolutely, along with working with already nonprofits who are doing this work and who can, if we have such programs, can partner with them and they can administer the program.
Right.
So, so this is what this is to come from, and also it could be part of, as we talk about enhancing our communities, our neighborhoods, can also be a part of that. And right, and community revitalization and beautification. So that's all wrapped up into this type of program.
Which brings me to the tree canopy and native plants for birds and bees.
Yes.
Paris realized they don't have enough trees. The oldest tree in Paris was planted by it was a gift from the Americas in 1601. It's the oldest tree in Paris. And they are now, they're realizing trees. I just read, Paris realizes that they need more trees, and other cities are talking about this too. Interesting, the oldest tree in Paris was a gift from the United States in 1601. I think it's a black locust near the cathedral. And I feel really strongly about the canopy. Interestingly enough, we talk about we need to replace the canopy. When I first started coming here in 1967, there were no trees.
Wow.
There really were no trees. It was
Wow.
not, there wasn't a canopy. We have done, we've made big steps towards that. But I mean, I look at Dixie Highway and we've all seen the photographs and, different articles that we read, a street without trees, a street with trees. It's not, it's, I think, a fairly low cost way to make streets more, I mean, Dixie Highway, I mean, the little yellow tabs are pretty for a month and a half, but they're not giving any shade. They're not giving any visual import into that city. So along with quality of life, I think really goes hand in hand with our tree canopy.
And it's fun that that came up almost organically because we have some bizarre, and I mean that in the best way possible, trees here. Like, I've seen cecropia trees, fruiting tree. I've seen, there's people with lychee, even our bump outs on 6th Avenue have persimmon, I think, on some of them. So it's pretty unique. And I think Commissioner Malay, you mentioned earlier, like we can't plant fruit trees everywhere, but in a way we kind of can, although I'm sure Jamie's listening. There's a cleanup issue about that, but
A rat
I mean,
issue, oh boy.
where it's at, but people are conscious about that, and people are deliberately doing that in their front yards. And I think, of all places in South Florida, that's here. Like people are very conscious.
And one thing I was educated a little bit about, because I've been having a running argument with code and city for 30 years about, sod, put sod down, you need to put sod down. And it's my understanding that our ordinance was changed a few years ago to allow for a more organic, native, not necessarily a uniform look on the front of your yard. So to me, the tree canopy is really important and a fairly low cost way to really improve the look of the city, and also obviously for environmental purposes. I think it was Commissioner Stokes first and then Boy.
Yep. We've definitely talked about tree canopies a lot in the past. I'm excited to see it made the list. I think it does a lot of things. It helps us address, I think there was some bullet point about inequities or neighborhoods that are traditionally underserved or and we see a disparity sometimes in wealthier neighborhoods that have that benefit of the additional shade and the heat island effect between the neighbor, and it's a health effect. And as we talk about rising utility costs, we brought it up as part of the conservation plan of how we can go out and lower the cost of energy through other methods. So I'm excited about doing this. The one thing I did talk to Dave McGrew as soon as I got elected about it was definitely having a plan. So I guess part of this money will hopefully help establish a plan. I love the tree giveaways every year, but I always wonder if they're making it into the streets, and if we could have a targeted program where we can really try to see where we're going to have the biggest impact.
Because with the tree giveaways, I mean, I think they're great, but there's no follow-up in terms of somebody got a tree and they left it in a pot in their backyard and they never planted it and it died. So I'd like to have more follow-up if we're going to do something like that.
And I do think I agree with you on Dixie Highway. I know we're going to have a discussion again about,
I'm not talking about just Dixie.
Right.
Yeah.
I know when we first got elected, there was a presentation that if FDOT or somebody comes and does improvements on Dixie Highway, they might fund that work for us as part of that work. And then hopefully we can use our money to get more into the neighborhoods.
Yep. Okay, Commissioner McBoy.
I'm just like a pig in heaven. It's speechless. No, yeah.
I'm not saying a word.
I think this is a very tree-friendly commission, which is wonderful. And you're quite correct, Mayor, that a tree board, it's probably about 10 years ago now, did work very hard on a landscape ordinance that was then adopted by the commission, and it helped move away from sod, helped push for trees.
But the message is still sod, what I hear from people when they do.
I'm hearing the same thing, and that's something that we want moved back to code, that, if we need to relook at our landscape ordinance, maybe it's slid a little bit, maybe it's been modified, I don't know, but we clearly, there are much better alternatives to sod. the yellow peanut grass. It's not fully native, but it's still an improvement over sod. There are a lot of things that are available. And they're interesting examples in the community. I've seen empty lots that were covered with the sunshine mimosa. I've seen empty lots that were covered with gopher apple, which is actually recommended by, I forget whether it's Central Florida, South Florida University if you want to do green roofs, go for it. And I'm finding it in my yard, it goes crazy after a while. It takes a while to get going. Definitely, I hope that we keep the emphasis, exactly as you said, Mayor, the yellow tabitas. And I'm going to be in a lot of trouble because I think it's the Venezuelan national tree, but they're not really very useful for shade, at least the ones we planted, and they don't do well in hurricanes. So, yes, we like natives. Yes, we like edibles, but we also like shade. So let's have a degree of flexibility on that.
The difference in a street with a canopy and not. I mean,
It's a
and
big
for
deal.
Traffic calming, for
Yep.
lots of purposes. We don't
Yep.
need to beat this horse right now. Commissioner Ortega.
As somebody who does walk from their house to downtown very often, and I'm in a non-affluent community, I play jump from side to side to find the tree. So I completely agree with this. I don't know if anyone's aware of all the trees that were just planted on 12th Avenue. So I
Right.
think the DOJ did, I think it was 14 trees, and they're also bringing in benches at every bus stop
Right.
for the kids.
There needs to be.
So they are planted, but it'll take probably 5 to 6 years, hopefully, to get a little bit of height on them. So I know it's been done. And if we can find the twofers again, like get more grant money to match that, I think it's the best way to go.
I think there's probably private money there's a lot of interest in tree planting, both, it's a carbon sink, it's a improvement, it's a known studied improvement to property values, there's heat island effect benefits, there's a whole string of reasons that it's good. I'm already, and to your comment, Mayor, I'm very hear you on the follow through with the tree giveaway. I can say that my 4 slash pines, which are not great for shade, but they are native. Some of them came home on a bicycle from tree, and some of them are probably 3 times my height at this point. And that's,
I got jacarandas and I got poincianas.
yeah,
And this is now, we're going back like 15 years. They're huge.
yeah.
My-
Stuff
my
does
one
grow here
artist,
if you can get
it
it
really
watered
does.
in. At the
And anybody
beginning.
knows that anybody that knows that my house, I mean, people park in front of my house.
For
just
the
to get-
shade.
Can I help you? No, I'm good. I'm like, there's a, so, and I mean, I love my trees, of course, during hurricanes, they're ficus and I get really nervous. Who was first?
I was.
Okay.
One last comment, just for the city manager to, as we're trying to design this and thinking about it, if we could build in an educational component into it, I think that would be really useful. And again, like we talked about with our pool, right? If there's things that I think it's valuable to build an education component, because we want everybody in the community, even if they're not getting a tree, to understand the value of them. But maybe it will help us open us up to some other funding sources.
And
as
even in
well.
our schools, education, I know that part, my nephew works at Adopt a Family and they have this thing, Project Grow. I mean, he's got gardens and vegetables and stuff. He's teaching kids about raising plants.
I took my girls, they did a tree project in your district. I can't remember where, a few years ago.
We did it along one, I helped plant too.
Did you? Yeah, I
It
took
was-
my
I think-
girls out
yeah.
there and we dug a hole and helped plant
It
the
was a full
tree.
day.
Huh?
Along one of the greenways.
Okay. It was great. And I think some of them might have been, but it was fun to get the kids out and
Yeah.
be involved and learn a little bit about it. And so I think there's so much opportunity here.
And fairly low cost. We're not
Yes.
talking about building buildings. So, okay, and the next thing down is, now we have skipped over the mobility plan, so we're gonna skip
Can
over
we
that
just
for a minute. Wait,
stick some money to that one and
I
then
think
go
that
on?
was
I think we need to.
given, right?
I think we all already agreed on that one.
Mobility plan?
Yeah.
I just don't even know what that means. I mean, really, what does that mean?
William's doing a presentation, isn't
He
he?
is doing a presentation and I believe he gave an estimate of it of about $150,000.
For a mobility plan?
Yes, yes,
Not to
do the
actually have
research.
anything, but just to have it, the plan.
That's right, just for the plan.
Of
Which might,
things that we can hopefully afford to do.
in ways that we can fund them too.
Mhm.
Because remember the lawsuit in Palm Beach Gardens? for the impact fees. I know, I don't think it went the way we wanted to. We'll dig into that, but if you have a mobility plan with developments that are coming on board, you might
okay.
be able to have them
Because
contribute
the-
instead of their impact fees leaving us and going elsewhere.
The
So
thought of
Right.
having a little trolley or something that goes from, around the city up to the beach and back is just wonderful.
Right, and I think William Waters is online if he like to contribute to that discussion.
Mr. Waters?
And give a slight overview of what would be part of starting that mobility plan. Mr. Waters?
Oops.
There he
I
is.
saw some movement
There he
there.
is.
Dark here. We are having a presentation, I believe in September, from the lady who is like the guru of mobility with WGI, who's one of our continuing service consultants. And I want her to help us understand the breadth of what mobility involves and what it includes. It's more than just getting people around. It's also appreciating efficiencies and the future of what mobility will be, such as autonomous cars and deliveries, and how we can accommodate mobility in the best way in a established community that has fairly constrained rights of way. So Lisa and I don't remember her last name. I've scheduled a presentation with her. I've already met with them last week. And we're putting it together, and that will be coming before you in September. And then we'll map out exactly what a plan would include. It's probably going to be a 2-year process. One is putting together the plan, and then the next one is putting together sort of a capital improvement program as to what we would like to see prioritized to be implemented and constructed to implement the plan. And as Commissioner Stokes mentioned, once that's adopted, then it would be able, something that would be available for developers to pick in order to meet their sustainable bonus requirements, or we could use some of our money from our transfer development right program or the sustainable bonus program to fund ourselves and within the city.
There's also that group that's been emailing us a lot about some guy from Miami with a
Freebie.
We're talking to them, aren't we?
Yes, we've been
Yes.
having conversations with them.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, bus shelters, I think, is an important one. People that need to sit and wait for a bus should have covering.
Yep.
And they can be solar so that they have their own lighting at night.
And the Ed and the city manager and I talked about a thought that I've had for years and never done anything on, is put the solar panels on the roof, but then add some of the little brushless motor fans that you see in the back of in the old days of the desktop computers. They're about $5 a piece. You line up 3 of them and they run next to nothing for juice, and they give you quite a bit of cooling.
Yeah, but
And-
all from the solar panel.
All from the solar panels. It's very low, you don't have to connect to a power line. You don't have to do anything
Right.
major. Well, you don't even need them. It's pretty
He'll
straightforward,
be in his,
but yes.
just so exciting. Okay, so I mean, and again, tonight we're really talking after we got with our needs, we're talking conceptually about things that everything here is something that we need to talk about.
I think some of it is gonna go so far, like back in, just one last thought on a tree canopy, we have such a talented tree.
Mhm.
I don't think we're necessarily committing any kind of money here with ARPA funds, but that's something maybe I think if we give them maybe a little bit of a budget or something, they can probably come up with.
One of the things in that direction, and I agree that a small budget could go quite a way, and they are very enthusiastic. And there's a lot of talent with them. At one point, I was over Sanibel Island. Is that the one that's over on the west coast?
There's multiple over there.
Anyhow, I think it's Sanibel Island that we were at. We were at, and we visited their city hall, and all of the planting around City Hall was native plants like Hapaluxo. But in addition, all of their brochures that they had, and they were low key, they were not glossy, fancy things, but they all said, hey, if you were going to go plant them, and I'm going to use a bad example, a Melaleuca, how about instead you plant this? And here's what it would do for you. And they had little informational brochures very readily available. And I've always thought, we should do that here. Steal a bunch of theirs, adapt them to local. They'd be happy to let us have the stuff. And I think $5,000 would get you little threefold stuff that would go a long way to say, hey, we're serious about this. Here's the information. Because I hear from all sorts of people that, oh, I'd love to do it, but I don't know how, which is, that's a legitimate position to be in. Let's help them out.
And how many people know that we have a Dave McGrew that will come out to your house and talk to you?
Most people don't.
Right, we have a lot, and the communication piece is.
My question to that was, how would we distribute that so people know that those flyers are available? Again, the communication problem. Okay, one thing we haven't talked about, I see no lights on some, one thing that we talked about that it's on this list in terms of quality of life is broadband free, I think that we need to look at that. One of the things that keeps our kids and our families a little bit behind is that they cannot afford internet. And I think to that end, it would be helpful to our citizens in general. We have kids that are struggling with school. If we could look into, and I don't know anything about the status, if it was ever looked into or what it would cost or how it's done. But I think that in terms of quality of life, we can talk about bricks and mortar, but the concept of the broadband availability, and even like downtown, I've gotten some, comments from folks, there's no internet downtown, and I don't know if other cities provide that, but I don't think it's a bad thing to offer. I'm sure some do. Commissioners, so that I'm just throwing that one out there. Commissioner Stokes, it's first.
I do. I think it would be great to get an analysis of the work that our utility, when they partnered with the school district and they did their whole Wi-Fi program. And I think it really helped with our coverage and access to the internet. But I'm curious, how much did it cover? And is there a way to piggyback on it to extend that coverage? But I know I talked to Mr. Liberty when I first got here, because I was like, we should have just municipal Wi-Fi. We have our own electric company. We should have our own Wi-Fi.
Because we don't have enough to take care of.
But I never really had the time to dig in and find out, like, what is our coverage? What is our access right now? So I think some sort of analysis would really help us identify what the needs and the potential is.
I think it'd be a real big improvement into quality, but because even if you don't have a place to live, you got a cell phone, you can access, you can get your emails, you can stay in touch with the world. Commissioner Malega is next.
That brings me to a conversation with FDOT. We had requested that one of the flashing pedestrians, the signs that they're going to put for pedestrian crossing on, I think it's C and Lake or E and Lake, that instead of just the ones that are there, nobody pays attention to, we asked them to do a light one, the one that's got, and their response was, well, that needs to be fiber optic and we didn't put that in the budget. So if there's things like
Needs to be
fiber optic line needs to be there for those lights to go off, is what they told us. So if there's any way that we can look at some of those projects that are coming in through FDOT for Lake Lucerne Federal Highway and see how we can piggyback onto that to throw some money into the pot to help out. That's what they said. It had something to do with the fiber optic lines weren't what they needed to be. No, the pedestrian crosswalk sign, there's one that goes like this and it lights up all the way around. And that you push the button and then that's what they claimed it needed more fiber optics, and that wasn't part of the budget. So I'm just thinking, if we're going to talk about broadband and that, and we have this money coming in and this infrastructure coming in through FDOT, if there's any way that we can, with the tree canopies, right? Like FDOT's tearing apart Lake and Lucerne. How do we say, okay, in the process of you doing that, can we add 15 trees and here's what we'll pay for it while you're doing this construction? Because they're doing Lake and Lucerne next year, so.
Years ago or 20 years ago, the downtown, about 20 years ago, Lake Avenue, there was improvements with the paver bricks and stuff, and there's an awful lot of palm trees. And when you look down, they're pretty, but when you look down the road, there's no shade from them. So again, that could be a beautiful, say you talk about Sanibel Island, after one of the hurricanes, they were devastated, but there was, as you drove up the road there, and I think they were ficus trees or some sort of that family tree. It was driving through a tunnel. It was gorgeous. And they lost all of them. So I don't know if they replanted them, but it just makes such a difference visually and psychologically to have trees. Mr. McBoy.
And maybe you could string the fiber optics through the trees. 100% in favor of the broadband one, and let's work with the electric utility. There are systems of running it over electric lines, whether we want to do that, whether it's a good idea, I have no idea.
I think we just need to
Definitely.
look into it.
Yeah, we should look into it and also look into the one that Commissioner Stokes mentioned, because that, if I remember right, was quite a partnership between private school district and I want to say one other partner that I don't remember who it was, but it was definitely a multi-partner thing. Can we just expand that? Can we expand the access? Because that access, I think, was limited to low-income family, maybe there's a way to just open that up wider. So yes, let's allocate some funds to that, and it's one of the categories, so.
It's on the list.
Okay, are we almost done? Because tonight is election night, so.
Yes,
I
and
was-
infrastructure is already covered through the
You
capital.
took the
improvement.
words right out of my mouth. It's 8 o'clock. We've been at this for 3 hours. I
great.
think that what we have is a pretty good, and we've got consensus for the needs. To earmark those funds. A lot of conversations about, the critical, the more social service issues that we're talking about, which we're gonna have to have a workshop on. Just let me recover from my next surgery. Can we make it like end of September? I'm going back under the knife next week. So,
See it,
Matt-
scary.
it's scary.
Yeah.
I'll do my best to connect with those organizations as well and like invite them to present, because I think if you see what some of the work that some.
Listen, the more help we can get from, like
The
you
better.
said, we have a lot in there. There are a lot of organizations in our city that we can hopefully piggyback money with. And we have, and the amount of money we have right now that we're going to be dealing with is about $9 million. Okay. So hopefully we can do something with $9 million. So every day we can get more money.
So let it sit too long.
Right. Yeah.
No,
We're collecting
So I
interest.
would like to propose that, I know that Ms. Davis has her light on, so we're gonna hear what she says.
thank you.
You're welcome.
No, I just wanted to just give my little closing statement to say I'm very excited. I think we had a very productive meeting today. From the staff point of view, this is what we needed to get the direction. What are you looking for? And so we got that concerning the capital improvement needs and as well as the other items that we discussed concerning the other priority related issues. And even along that line, dealing with what we're talking about, the more human services type of issues. I say that even if we say, let's take $1 million to distribute among these issues, just for staff purposes, to know that we're going to set aside something, because it's, from my standpoint, I feel like we have a consensus that you agree with what has been listed here. At some way, in some capacity, you would like to move forward on some of these efforts. So I just want to make sure I got the right understanding.
And I want to thank you for giving us the back. I mean, these are really helpful. It was a really good outline for us to follow. It made it a lot easier. So,
Thank you. And it's turn it over to Bruce. I think Bruce want to wrap it up and talk about some numbers,
Yes.
probably.
so annoying.
I know, aren't I? I
Clean
do
up, man.
apologize. No, I know.
The cleanup.
Just as a follow-up, I had to agree with Carmen's sentiments that we went a long way tonight with that. What I like to do is update the capital project list, get that out to you, because unfortunately, we still need to have one more workshop on capital and on the supplemental budget request. So, so that you have a current set of books, if you will. We'll get the updates out to you tomorrow on the CIP.
Great.
But if you remember, there's that ranking that I asked you. That's right, we have guys- homework. Shoot.
Yes,
you do. So,
Well, if I can say, we somewhat took care of a lot
A lot of it tonight.
These things are first
Yeah,
priority.
yes.
So I think we took care of that in some way tonight.
The capital stuff.
Yeah.
but there are some remaining capital.
Yes.
Not that we have a lot of remaining dollars, but we'll just put that all out there. But we do need to have one more additional workshop so we can, the 3 remaining things before we have our first hearing is the
the supplemental budget request, the capital, and then the fee schedule.
Right.
Okay, so we're not out of the woods yet. So if you could do your homework, I would be greatly
Where is
appreciated.
that? I don't know that.
There's an email. I'll send it out again.
Okay.
Would it be possible to encourage us to do our homework by taking off the things that we've already decided and said, here, focus on these remaining?
It'll be
Yes,
updated.
it will be reflected. It will be
I'm trying
reflected,
to-
so,
I'm trying to
yes.
help us all out here.
I have a question about the fee schedule
I'm sorry.
for the schedule of fees.
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
you, have you, or can you highlight any of the fees that are changing?
Changing.
Or are so many changing, you just need to look at every single one of them?
No, it's not everything's changing.
Okay.
We'll send it out to you with the, you don't know. Yes.
Okay,
I'll
thank
get
you.
the- Yes.
So I want to thank everybody tonight. I think this is really good. And it really is so welcoming when we actually do have an opportunity to sit and just
Talk.
talk
Yeah.
and discuss things. We do have an agenda meeting tomorrow morning.
I'm available only for the first half hour.
Okay. Okay. I'll be at Zoom from my house. And I do need the link. Sometimes the link doesn't get sent out and I have that Gmail address that is much easier for me to get the link. So, and then we'll see each other Thursday night. So, good work, everybody. I mean, this is kind of things we need to talk about and, we'll follow up with some of the things about ordinance changes tomorrow morning, I think. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
We do not.
just-
It's a work session.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're adjourned.
Good night, everyone. Enjoy your evening.
Good night. Thank you all.